Hi everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 15 on Sifted Games. Hope everyone had an excellent E3. I know I sure did. It was a great show, in my opinion, one of the best E3s ever. We're going to talk about that a ton on today's show, as you might expect. Also want to say thanks to all the people who were a part of our E3 hangout on Wednesday. It was an absolutely amazing time. Sitting here, switching through all the streams, finding the good stuff, actually chatting and doing Q&A with you guys all day. We streamed for 8 hours straight on Wednesday. On Monday, we streamed for, Matt, what was it, like 13 hours, I think we streamed?
Yep,
13. We did a lot of streaming out of here over E3. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know that we did. Do want to mention something off the top. Some of you guys may know or may not know, Marcus was not a part of our E3 coverage, and since I know there's going to be a ton of questions, there already have been a ton of questions, and I don't want them to keep coming, I just want to kind of set the record straight and let you guys know what happened and what is going on. So I'm just going to tell you exactly what happened. You can form your own opinions based upon that. So basically what happened was, over the weekend, the final schedule for our E3 coverage was sent out after having been discussed multiple times, both on the show and both privately off air. When the schedule was sent out to Marcus, he replied that he did not want to do that much. I replied back to him, basically cut a lot of the schedule out for him. He said he still didn't want to do it. This was basically the day before the show. So I had said, well, let's do a call. He said he would call me back on Sunday. He never called me back. So at that point, I assumed maybe he wasn't going to do the show. I began to go into scramble mode to try to find someone to replace him. Unfortunately, when something like that happens that late, everybody else is already hired for E3. It was very difficult to find someone to fill in for him. I was fortunate enough to find someone who was great, which was Daniel Kaiser. He came on the show with us, again, on very short notice. So we had problems with audio, working with that. We come in on Monday to stream. We still had no idea if Marcus was going to show up or not because he'd never replied to any calls or texts throughout Sunday. And as it works out, he did not show up for our coverage on Monday. So DK and I plowed on through. As far as what's going on with Marcus, I haven't really talked to him. I ran into him briefly at a party on Tuesday. It wasn't really the time or place to talk about it. I haven't heard from him since. So I really have no idea what's going on with Marcus. I don't know if he's ever going to come back and work on GameFace or with Sifted again. So that's it. You could ask him. He won't reply to my calls or texts. That's pretty much where it sits. But in his place, someone who actually needs no introduction whatsoever, sitting with me today for GameFace episode 15, Brandon Jones from Game Trailers. What's up, brother?
Just reminds me of Invisible Walls back in the day. Whenever Marcus couldn't show up, it's like, hey, Brandon, what are you doing? I'm here, and I will be here anytime because I discovered that I am right down the street. From
your house is right down the street.
From Sifted HQ.
That's right.
Yeah, I could ride a bike to this office, so this is twist my arm to just cruise right down the street on a sunny day in California and talk about E3.
And
I'm down.
Brandon is now the editor-in-chief of Game Trailers. You guys probably know that already. And you're coming off one heck of a week. You guys had a big clip that went viral this week, which is really hard to do in the madness of E3, to be a one clip that kind of goes viral.
We had a lot of love. I mean, that was, we were just there covering it. Thank you, Sony, for announcing Shenmue 3. That was part of it. But had a lot of really great social interaction. Shuhei Yoshida mentioned us. He said he liked the madness of Game Trailers, and that was really appreciated. We got, specifically Shenmue, our reaction. And also have to thank...
that's what it was. It was a reaction to the Shenmue announcement that went big.
We had our reaction to Final Fantasy VII, went up on at midnight. Chris Hardwick got a kick out of that. And I think it was just the perfect moment because Mike Huber's just... I mean, that guy, in the middle of the day, will have a big, heavy sigh, and we'll be like, what is it, Mike? He's like, I'm just thinking about Shenmue, and he's been, for months now, periodically on our streams, on our Twitch channel, they've been playing Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2, and they're like right in the middle of Shenmue 2 now. And so, it was just always kind of like that thing that they were into, and we'd always kind of joke, like, okay, yeah, Half-Life 3, Shenmue 3, like all these games, and then... dreams come true.
Sometimes they do.
Yeah. It was a legendary E3. I actually bumped into a lot of people at the show that said it was without a doubt, their best E3 they'd ever been to.
Yeah, I've been to 17 E3s or 16.
Yeah, it was my 14th.
Yeah, it was certainly up there. I don't know if it was the best, but it was certainly up there. I mean, we had talked about it. We did an analysis of all the press conferences on our live stream, and I had mentioned that Sony's press conference was one of the best that I had ever seen. And, when you talk about 17 years, 5 or 6 press conferences per year at least, that's some lofty company there. So We are going to walk you guys through pretty much all of E3. We're going to have some fun with the show today. We're going to make some picks for like some games that really kind of rose up at E3, the games that kind of we lost some gusto for through E3. We're going to pick our game of the show at the end. We're going to answer some questions from you guys at the end. We're going to have a good time. But for now, let's get to the Big Six. So, Brandon, one of the things I saw this week, I went on YouTube's live stream on Tuesday, and they had us pick our favorite press conference. And pretty much everybody was in agreement that their favorite press conference was Sony. I think it was the best press conference, not favorite. And one of the guys did pick Microsoft, and his contention was that E3 is not to get people excited for games that are to come, but to show people what they're going to be playing very soon. And then after I left that was the first day of the show. I ended up seeing that sentiment all over online. Well, not all over, but I saw a lot of people mentioning, yeah, I agree with that. I think that that's the case. But in your opinion, Brandon, what is E3?
Well, I mean, to make the argument against PlayStation versus Xbox, because I did hear this, a lot of people were like, well,
all these games are for PlayStation or may never be released.
That Sony did do that. If you went to Sony's booth, you could play Journey, which is coming to PlayStation 4, which I had to, it's like, I'm like playing Journey, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm in E3, I'm playing Journey. I played this game before. But like, that was accessible at the show, like Fat Princess Adventures. There are a lot of cool, like, independent games and some, like, games that aren't necessarily getting that much attention right now that maybe wouldn't have really stood out at Sony's press conference. And that were available at their booth. So like there was a lot of stuff that Sony did bring to the show that is going to be accessible very soon. They just realized like, oh my God, we potentially can have all these incredible announcements at our press conference. So they really made that the focus. But the one point that I brought up about Sony, which was interesting, which is like it almost seemed like a press conference for like lawyers, because it was like announcements. It like reminded me of like when the Beatles came to iTunes. And like, there's no new music is happening here. This is literally just like a deal got made, and like a lot of the big exciting moments at Sony were that. We're just like we made this happen. We got the deal for FF7. We got the deal for Shenmue 3. But yeah, I think it's a mix of both. I think E3. I think E3 is the time to just set up the year, because the thing is, like, even if I'm not playing these games, we're still going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
And people in the position that we're in, where like that's our trade. We get on video and we talk about these games and we try to create conversations about them. I can just as easily talk for 5 hours about a game I've never played I've only seen one video of versus a game that I am playing right now. So I don't think it matters. I think it's just a different conversation. I don't think there's necessarily a better conversation over the other one, but it's like, when you compare those two press conferences, like one made some of my employees almost pass out.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the winner. I'm sorry, that is the, especially when it's before the show. When it's kicking everything off. It's Square and Nintendo. You decide to come in there right under the radar, right before doors open. But that Monday is really the day, to get people talking and get people excited about your offerings. And
here's what I say. If you don't announce games at E3, when the hell do you announce them?
Yeah.
It's like if you want people to start getting excited for your products, and we both know that the entire industry is driven by pre-orders, and that's how you get shelf space at all the retailers, and that's how you get your game out there so that there's, you're at eye level and you get adequate stock in the store so you don't sell out. It's all driven by hype. I mean, that is the nature of our industry. Like it or not, love it or hate it, that's what drives our industry. That's what drives the revenue in our industry. And so if you're not going to announce a game at E3 when you have this huge production, this massive stage that you've built, and 10,000 people in that room with you, and that stream going out to millions and millions of people all around the world, and you're getting articles on Yahoo.com and the New York Times and the LA Times and the Wall Street Journal, and I can go on. When else do you announce it?
Yeah.
Like
Gamescom.
That is what E3 is for. It's for game announcements.
If you're Sam Lake, Gamescom.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I'm not foolish. Like, Final Fantasy VII probably hasn't even been started yet. Like, they paid somebody to build a CG trailer. Like, we're announcing this now. We're probably not going to play that game until near the end of the lifespan of the PlayStation 4. So look, I'm not delusional. I mean, just look at Versus 13. I mean, here we sit 10 years later, and we're still waiting for that product to be released. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to announce a game, you announce a game at E3. And look,
or blow it out. I mean, you look at something like Doom or Fallout. Both of those had already been announced. We knew it. We were predicting it. You would think all the steam had been taken out of that announcement, and still just kaboom right at the beginning. You know, that's something that was.
And look, I'm not foolish. I can see Microsoft showed games that are coming soonish.
Right.
And several of them will be coming out this year. But Microsoft did the same thing. It showed ReCore and a bunch of other games that aren't coming out for a long time.
Right.
I mean, they both played the same game, but the fact of the matter is, playing the same game, I think most people would agree that Sony won playing those games. And I would also argue that E3 is for hype generating, and E3 is for announcing games. It's when you have the most eyes on you.
Yeah.
It's when you're going to have the most impact announcing a game. Like, Gamescom obviously has risen up a lot over the last half decade. It's a huge show.
Last couple of years, really.
The last couple of years, you're right. I mean, it really kind of went nuclear. But it's still not as big a show as far as international media exposure. You're not going to have the LA Times going to Germany to cover Gamescom.
Right.
Like, maybe they'll report some secondhand stuff. They'll do a wrap-up story on Gamescom. They're not going to go there and send an army of people there to cover it. And so this is the one opportunity for these publishers to really get their games out there, get people excited for them, get the fans excited for them, get them to go out and pre-order, which just, it's a cog of the industry that's always been there. Well, not always, but it's been there for about 20 years now.
Yeah.
And that's what the publishers assume it's for. And me as a consumer, or as someone who just loves games, that's what I look to E3 for. I look for people to announce games. I'll expect every one of them to come out in the next 4 months. I mean, wouldn't E3 be boring if every game that we saw were only the games that are coming out before the end of the year? I mean,
not to mention that the way advertising goes, a lot of those would be games like Arkham Knight, which technically it was a game we were going to play in the future, post E3, but I mean, the future being like, Tuesday.
Yeah.
But I think one of the big things that I've noticed, because Shane, you used to work with me at Game Trailers, and you were editor-in-chief, and I was always mostly like back at headquarters. I was always like editing or working with editors or writing scripts or getting gameplay and stuff like that. And like I would go to the show, but I would never really like get the crazy behind closed doors appointments or I would just kind of run and see all the media and get hands on with whatever I could. And what I'm noticing now is that like it's so important to have everyone here. To literally have everybody here for like a week is such a huge deal. Like physically, their bodies here, and and like we did our we're in Beverly Hills when we did our coverage, and like we got EA to come out, we got Square Enix to come out, Platinum Games came out, but like so many people I talked to were like, half an hour away from the show, I don't know, and that's just a half an hour, and so everyone just really wants to be there, rooted in that spot, and. When you add up all of the social interaction that happens that week, everybody talking online, everybody going to different shows from different outlets, everybody talking at the parties afterward, just crossing in the hallways. What did you just check out? Oh, Battlefront's amazing. What did you check out? Uncharted, you got to see it. And like having this person-to-person physical interaction.
It's a community.
When people are in
gaming community,
people are in Vancouver, they're in Texas, they're in New York. They're the developers all over the place. North Carolina, I'm discovering, is this crazy bastion of game development.
Yeah, Raleigh.
And so. When you get everybody and you really find out organically what rises to the top, what is the stuff that keeps coming up in conversation that people keep talking about. That's really what you want to win. And if you miss out on that, if you're not there, if you don't show up at least, because to me it's not. We can talk about what won the show and what's on top and what's bottom. Like, just being there is winning.
Yeah. I'm sure you look at the numbers at GT, like what games do the most views, what games generate the most commentary. It's really not the games that are coming out in like a month or two.
Oh yeah.
It's the games that are just announced and the first trailer is shown. Maybe they show a gameplay demo like they did with Horizon or whatever. But those are the games that generate the most interest from the people who are watching E3, the consumers and the gamers. So, it also bears out with them. They don't care about the stuff that's coming out in a few months. And the big reason is because they've already seen. Look at Batman. How many trailers have we seen for Batman?
Oh, don't get me started on Batman trailers, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It's like people are kind of burnt out. They're like, they get it at that point. If E3 if every press conference was just games coming out for the fifth, no one would care.
Yeah,
E3 would die.
No,
it would have nothing. So, I don't know. I don't think there's much of an argument to say, oh, you should give more credence to a publisher who only shows stuff that's coming out really soon. To me, that's just a false argument, and maybe
I think it's both. I think it's a little bit of everything. And sometimes that's what happens with press conferences is you have, well, like what you just said, where you have like, somebody will come out and they'll have a bunch of great announcements, but the stuff, stuff I played at the show is okay. And then these other guys, like the stuff that they're bringing, they have a really strong, catalog right now, like this quarter, whereas the announcements, not really, they push some stuff to other shows. So it's really having everything. And that's actually when we get into the games that we appreciate, especially our game of the show. Like to me, it's all of those things. Like how are your trailers? How is it? Did it look playable? What did you show? Was it new?
Yeah.
Was it like an affirmation of what I thought of the game, or was I surprised? And if you can hit all those boxes, that to me is like the total package. And then that's what I want to award game of the show. Just something that's did a little bit of everything. And did it all right.
Yep, we'll get to that in a bit. Time to move on to topic 2. So the second topic today is Nintendo.
This headline, man, is so great.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Especially when you made the decision that Nintendo made, where they're like, we're not having a show anymore.
Yeah.
And that's still.
And you know what? I feel like that's a cop out. I feel like that's like the guy who takes his ball and goes home because he lost. Like. It's like you're on the playground, like the kid brings the ball,
right.
His team loses, and everyone else still wants to play, and he's like, no, I'm going home. Like,
at the same time, like we're in video production, so like I definitely appreciate the fact, like those puppets, you couldn't have done that.
They were great. Got
so
Jim Henson in there, and
right. And so
not him, obviously, but his company.
I didn't remember that part. And that's just a great opportunity to really clean up your message. To really like have everybody on like all across Nintendo, in Japan and in America, watch the whole thing, agree to it, start to finish. Like we loved Sony, but we were talking right beforehand about how like nerve-wracking the Uncharted demo was, because Nate didn't move, and like all these incredible. Sony was just killing it in the very last thing. You're just like, come on,
which
Drake.
Is like the big crescendo. It's like the game everyone's waiting to see.
Walk, Drake, walk.
Yeah.
And you just you do away with all that with Nintendo. They basically just said like we really want to have a very clean message.
But that's the other thing though. They're playing it safe. They're not taking the risk. They're not live demoing their games.
Right.
I mean, they're pre-recording everything. Somebody screws something up. The game doesn't play the way it's supposed. I mean, it's kind of cheating in all honesty. Like that's why I always kind of grade
but
like
it only
Nintendo.
Backfires on them.
Yeah.
They're only shooting themselves in the foot, by not like, getting people really excited and talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the lack of excitement though is just that they just had nothing to show.
Yeah.
I mean, so they don't show Zelda. They had said they weren't going to show Zelda already before the show. I still thought that they would. Like I thought they were like throwing people off the scent, and they were still going to at least show a trailer for the game. So they don't show it, and afterwards, like it comes out that Iwata-san like apologized, but it turns out he didn't really apologize.
Yeah,
he was just saying
lost in translation a little bit. I think
we'll listen to feedback to make everything we do better, is what he ultimately really said. But then people were saying, okay, well, Zelda wasn't here. Why wasn't Zelda here? And Reggie's answer was, well, we don't show games that are really far out. And, well, okay. How many times has Xenoblade Chronicles X been at E3?
Right.
3 times, I think it's been? No, I'm not even exaggerating. I think it's been 3 times that it's been there. How many times has Yoshi's Woolly World been at E3? At least 2.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can go on and on and on. So it turns out that it was just a paper argument from Nintendo on why Zelda wasn't there. I think my overall impression from Nintendo at this show is that, like, the Wii U's done. In their mind, it's done. They have moved on already internally. They're tossing out a couple of these crappy little games like Mario Tennis or whatever to try to fill these gaps. And I mean, and the gaps are going to get worse and worse and worse as the next 18 months roll on. I mean, I don't know how you could just be a Wii U owner for the next 12 months until next E3 rolls around. Like, you're not going to have a ton to play. I feel like this whole E3 presentation from Nintendo was deflection. They said it was called transformation. That was the whole theme of their... But they showed none of their transformation. They didn't show any of their mobile games. They didn't show anything that shows how they are transforming. They didn't show the NX or talk about the NX, which probably is going to be their other part of their big transformation.
Right.
I cannot believe they didn't show anything mobile. That, to me, is mind-boggling.
Yeah, at least just pick a specific direction of what you want to talk about. It's weird. Like I feel like Nintendo is kind of like a club or something. It's just that place. Like, oh, we go to that place, we hang out with those guys.
Yeah.
And then we'll get back and we'll talk about Microsoft and Sony, and we'll talk about like, what they're really doing to be competitive. And I think they didn't really come out and say that, but yeah, I think they're basically just kind of like pushing the Wii U off to the side and being like, we're not, we're just going to be Nintendo. We're just going to do what we do, and. hopefully that will be enough. But we're basically out of the game of really being competitive, of really like trying to challenge. And on one hand, like they didn't mention stuff about the NX, but like the other hand, like they really rushed the Wii U to market. I mean, and
which is insane
and the hardware
considering they
wasn't
had
ready
the
or
most
anything.
successful platform last generation.
Right? And they didn't need to
Why
just
rush
get that
it
out
at all?
that fast. So I think they're really holding off on doing something big. And I think like if I the horse I'm putting my money on for Nintendo is I think we're not going to get a handheld system or a console system. I think maybe both.
Yeah, I've been saying the same thing. I think it's some hybrid thing that you can take out of the home, bring it back home, dock it.
That they'll be that the Wii U will basically be just like some weird little thing, because they talked about the Wii and the Wii U. They're like, oh, have it on all the time. It's like this is the only console you should ever play. And there'll be some kind of port that basically like handles a lot of the processing, between like the big games that you would just download right to this thing, and then we'll get some new awesome handheld, and then that'll basically I'm presuming that'll be your controller as well.
Yeah.
That you'll that's what you'll play, like a smaller version of the gamepad.
Let's fast forward to next E3. So let's assume,
okay,
which I think is a safe assumption, that Nintendo will unveil the NX at next year's E3.
Okay.
Do they do a press conference? Is it a direct?
Well,
can you debut a console with a frickin' pre-recorded video?
Yeah, I guess.
Can you do that?
They're going to try. You
really think they'll do that?
Well,
you don't think they'll have a press?
Are they going to have Nintendo World Championship next year? How do you think that went off? Because that was their stage show.
It went pretty well.
And that was.
And I'll get into that a little bit later because it actually had a pretty big impact on me.
They brought some fun people out, and again, it's a club atmosphere. It's like Nintendo really showed up to just have a fun time. Their booth has always been really accessible. Mario Tennis is not something anybody was really excited about, but it was there. And you could play it. It just got announced, and you could get hands on with it. Well,
I'll put it to you this way: I went to Nintendo's booth, and I immediately went to play Star Fox because I've been waiting for a real sequel to Star Fox 64 for way too long. Go and play Star Fox. I actually really liked Star Fox. I don't know what people are complaining about.
Bloodwood said it controls really well.
Yeah.
He really dug it. Yeah.
Like people are complaining about the gyro controls, but the gyro controls, basically how it works is you play the game with the sticks while it's on the screen, and if you want to fine tune your aim, you look down at the gamepad, and then you can use the gyro to like fine tune the aim. I thought it worked great, and it's like it was very natural. Like it didn't. When you look down at the gamepad, it goes into like a first-person R-wing view, which is freaking awesome. When have we ever flown in first person in an R-wing?
Right.
And you can still control which direction you're going. You're just flying in first-person perspective. I thought it was great. Like, look, the game doesn't look amazing, but it is the Wii U. The game's been in development for a year. I'm sure they'll get it gussied up a little bit before its release comes out, but it's Star Fox 64 too.
Yeah, I think after the first Star Fox, like just graphics-wise, it was really revolutionary on the Super Nintendo. And then I think all the other ones past that are like
Star Fox 64 was pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome, but I think it's the control. They
had the Rumble Pack. Remember, it introduced the Rumble Pack for the first time.
I think the kind of the characters, like the world. I think there's a lot of things that Star Fox has going for it. I don't necessarily. I don't remember ever associating that franchise with being like bleeding edge graphics.
No, not at all.
Or performance. It's just like fun, like really inventive with the vehicles and how you transform and how like levels, progress.
I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
But to continue what I was saying is, so I play Star Fox, I put it down, and I start walking around the booth. And there was nothing to play. Nothing. Like Super Mario Maker had taken over the whole booth pretty much. Yeah. Like it literally was like 50% of the booth. There was like a big stage with like guys up on stage like announcing stuff, and I don't know if there's like a competition. It was just madness around that game, and I've already kind of experienced that game enough and that sort of thing. So I started walking around everywhere else, and I was like, I don't want to play anything here. I don't care about any of this crap. Like. There's a couple 3DS games I wanted to play. Like I played the Metroid for like 5 minutes, but like you're playing it with this girl who has it like attached to her hip, and it's like, this is awkward. Like, okay, I get it.
The Zelda like 3 swords basically. Like,
yeah, and that's the other Nintendo's focus, and it's smart because the 3DS is what's buttering Nintendo's bread right now. So there was a huge focus on 3DS, and if you're a 3DS owner, you're pretty happy about E3.
Yeah,
they're obviously not giving up on the 3DS. There's tons of great software coming for it. But just overall, like, handheld games don't work great at E3. It's really noisy, and the screen's really small, and there's lights flashing, and, like, you can't see the screen. And so I just left. I have never spent so little time in Nintendo's booth at E3 ever. In all the years I've gone to E3. Like, I can at least spend, like, always, even in their worst years. Like, even last year, it wasn't amazing, But there were like cool little games like Project Guard or Project Giant Robot. Like there were little like experiments in their booth that you could kind of sit and fiddle with for a while and spend some time. There was just nothing. Again, Nintendo, what the?
But it's almost like Nintendo's.
You realize this system's been out like 2.5 years.
Right.
It's
But they do the treehouse all day, every day. You know,
Yeah.
so they're not like hiding anything. You know, it's not like they announce something or they talk about something at their show and then you can't access it. But again, I think they're focusing way more on who we are as opposed to what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, they're just like, you just love Nintendo. We're puppets. You know, yay, Nintendo. And I do love Nintendo. I mean, you talk about Mario Maker being like the big push. It's like, that's not a game that I thought would have been capable of being your headline game.
That's going to be their big seller. You watch, though. I think that game's going to sell really well.
It's cool. That's fine. I'm not saying it won't, but I'm just talking about like what do you really talk about? You know, it's like I think it's one of those games where you really have to get in and like spend time like making a level and goofing around with the tools, and then it and not to mention if you're just completely obsessed with Mario, that's a huge deal. But
even the Treehouse kind of bore out their lineup because if you looked at the Treehouse last year, like their very biggest games, like they do 2 days of it. They do 2 demos. They do one on day 1 and then one on day 2. This year, there were games that literally they demoed all 3 days, and they weren't like it was Star Fox pushing it. All the rest of the games that they demoed for 3 days, I mean. Before they even went to E3, they should have looked at their lineup and been like, yeah, we should probably just stream like Tuesday and Wednesday. Because by the time Thursday rolled around, they were playing like these obscure like eShop games and like, it was not a good E3 for Nintendo. And to the point that I had asked you before about, I think they should do a real press conference next year. Like, I do not think unveiling a console in a pre-recorded video is the way you should be doing business in the games industry today. And so it was good to see that they did the Nintendo World Championship, so they did have like a physical presence a little bit at E3 this year. And hopefully they'll come full circle and actually have the press conference and maybe the Nintendo World Championships next year. So we'll see, but man, I mean, I can't believe it's 2.5 years into the Wii U's life cycle when we're writing it off already, and we're asking about the next console. It's so sad.
I think I don't know, I guess because I didn't have a lot of anticipation about Nintendo going into it, so I wasn't like crestfallen. You know, it was just kind of the thing where like I feel the same way about Nintendo after E3 as I did beforehand, and like that's not good. You know, you want to have excitement. You want that. If you go down, that's disappointing. You want people to go up, obviously, but just kind of being neutral is especially because I finally own a Wii U. I put that purchase off until last Christmas, and then I finally got one, and I think I got it at a time when there were a lot of really great games. Like pretty much every game I've played so far on the system has been fantastic.
It has a nice little core of games.
Right.
I mean, there's probably 8 to 10 games. I don't know if I'd call them all must plays, but they're all games that if you paid the full $60 for, you would never regret it, and you would get your money's worth out of it.
But if you want to have a kind of fun celebration for your company, do something like PSX. Do something like like a Sony exclusive thing where you can just come and like be a Sony fan and enjoy yourself.
Well, Nintendo used to do Space World in Japan. They used to have their own private show. I don't understand why they wouldn't just do. I mean, look, they're doing like this Best Buy outreach where people can go and play. Like they were playing Mario Maker. Who plays Mario Maker at a Best Buy?
Right.
Yeah, it's like you stand there for 30 minutes, like building a demo on the game.
They did it with Smash Brothers, so they just slunk that into that spot. But it was not a really good game to.
Yeah, it doesn't seem ideal. But Nintendo, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's a good thing they got a lot of money in the bank.
But it's just a question of what do they want to be? What do they want to do? And I didn't get the feeling that they were really trying to play up themselves as much as a like Sony or Microsoft. There's no Phil Spencer puppet. They would never do something like that. And so I think they're like being a little more playful to cover up their lack of announcements compared to like the other heavy hitters. But again, it all just plays towards like if they just want to survive and stick around and still be making hardware, then like I think we're okay. Like I think they're comfortable. But if they want to compete with all the other, even Bethesda, it's like Bethesda with 5 games destroyed Nintendo.
I know. Think about that.
Like that's insane. That's
think
bonkers,
about that.
Like,
that is a pretty good way to put it, and probably a good place to end the segment as well.
Sorry, Nintendo.
So next we're going to talk about one of the biggest surprises at all of E3, and that is Shenmue 3. Yeah, I mean, like you said, obviously the big viral video for you guys from the reaction of Shenmue 3 being announced. First, let's talk about Shenmue 3 itself. Brandon, have you played the first 2 Shenmue games?
I didn't play Shenmue 2. I played Shenmue 1. I really like open world games. And so I was
the progenitor,
I was
really, of
right.
open world
And
games.
so I was surprised that I didn't really take to Shenmue as much because I think it was maybe a little rigid for me. It was a little like one thing that I like that Grand Theft Auto does is there's no question what you should do. There's no question okay, here's this giant map. All of these little markers are things that you could do, and when you get into a mission, it will be really straightforward what you have to do. That thing might be difficult, but you never, it's never unclear what you have to do. And then if you want to break from the beaten path, if you want to go to your apartment and watch TV forever, if you want to go do a job, or even in GTA 3, if you want to do taxi missions, you know, all of those are on the side. We'll explain to you how you do that. Where in Shenmue, they really just kind of throw you in the deep end. It's really just kind of this is just the world, and go into that town.
Well, there was no blueprint. I mean, it was doing a lot of things for the very first time in video games. So
you go into this district and ask people what's up, and I'm like, there's 40 people walking around the streets. I don't know, and that was a little bit fatiguing for me, but nothing I would ever say works against Shenmue or was a mistake that they made. It's just it is what it is. It's just this world that's so deep, and it has its. It has a very particular way of character interaction. It's very Japanese.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were kind of taken aback when they saw the debut video, and it's just whoa, this game doesn't necessarily look like something that would come out, in 2015.
I would agree with that.
But I mean, So while I don't necessarily have a history with Shenmue, I totally understand. And being from game trailers, the hype that this has built up, for the potential.
That's what I want to talk about, though.
Yeah.
Is this game getting way more hype than it deserves? Because look, I played Shenmue when it came out, and then I think I played the European version of Shenmue 2. It never came out in North America. You go back and play those games now. I mean, you just said it. They're not that good.
They're not that sellable. I'll say
well,
that.
They weren't they weren't sellable then either.
Right.
The game did not sell well,
so,
which is why we never got the sequel in North America.
Right. So Shenmue's in this really interesting place where you have a lot of these. Take Bloodstained, for example, which came out. That's really excited that Kickstarter got approved, but at the same time. I think that's a perfect Kickstarter game. It's very scalable. Now he's going in, he's building this world, and he can add. It's I got another $1 million. Well, I'll just add another area over here. You're it's so easily scalable. But then you have something like Shenmue, where it's the story is so specific. There's so much voiceover. The world is so massive.
When the extra money comes in, where does it go?
Right.
What do you use? What do you take that money to build?
Not only that, but there's no small Shenmue 3. There's no way to we're just gonna make this small game, and then if we go past our Kickstarter thing, or if we maybe do it episodically, and then a Sony or a Microsoft's okay, we'll buy in on that, and then if that first episode does well, then we'll be able to do more afterwards. You just got to do it. You just have to make Shenmue 3.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the reason why it just seemed almost impossible. It was everyone just needs to stop talking about this and stop being excited about it. Like you said, it's kind of a niche thing. It's something that a lot of people in this industry that have played a lot of games and are familiar with a lot of series just completely miss Shenmue. They have no frame of reference on it. You had to check beforehand. Do you know anything about Shenmue?
Yeah.
Who knows? Some people. I'm sure
probably some of the guys that are working with you at GT, they were 8 years old when Shenmue came out.
So I'm sure there was a possibility that there could be even some people at the Sony press conference, professional journalists at E3, there to get the news that are I've never played any of those games. I really have no frame of reference. But at the same time, they cut to this guy standing, almost in tears. I can't believe.
And the guy looked like he was 20 years old.
I
was dude, you were 6 when Shenmue came out. Why are you so sad?
I think one of the big things, and probably the thing that I understood before I really got into Shenmue. I think the big thing for me was. It's like if we never got Return of the Jedi. It's literally like Han's put in carbonite, Luke gets his hand cut off.
Yeah.
We lose Hoth. All these horrible things happen, and then just radio silence for 10 years.
Yeah.
So especially since the first Shenmue 1 opens with your father being killed by this guy, and you never even get to where he's at because
you never get revenge.
You learn so many things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Twin Peaks, where starts with Laura Palmer and then just goes off in all these different crazy directions. And so I think, it was one of those announcements that the longer we got, the more it was apparent it wasn't going to happen. And then all of a sudden, boom. I think that was such a
Look, I'm pleasantly surprised. I want to wrap this. I did play the first 2 games, and I do want the story to wrap up. But, Yu Suzuki hasn't made a great game in a really long time. I mean, it has been a hot minute or two since he's made a great game.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I really couldn't tell you what he's been doing since
Right,
Shenmue 2.
because he's been like absent for so long. He's had a couple small projects here and there that he's worked on, nothing to set the world on fire. And then another thing that concerned me is like they showed the video of the game during the presentation, and eventually they put out the Kickstarter trailer. And I'm looking at the graphics, and I'm like, this game looks awful.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but no. Probably what happened here is that they just built like a CG mock-up or whatever to kind of show what it looks like. But then yesterday, Yu Suzuki comes out and he's like, basically says, no, those are like the real graphics, and like, I want to change his face. And I'm like, wait, bro, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm excited that they're trying, and I really hope that it comes out. And I hope it's the best open world game ever, but I'm really reticent to get too excited over it, because I don't want to be let down, I guess is the thing.
I'm cool with the visuals.
You're okay with those graphics?
I think it could actually look worse than that.
Well, it could, for sure.
And here, I'll make my case. For some reason, I actually get really weirded out by... I'm a big fan of continuity. You know, like the fact that there's a different Jennifer in Back to the Future 1 and 2 that bothers me. You know,
because
like
again, we're video producers, and you look for that in everything you watch.
As great as Elizabeth Shue is in Back to the Future 2 and 3, it bugs me. It's a different Jennifer. You know, like that stuff really bothers me. Like, and you know, even going into Uncharted 4, which looks incredible. It's like, how can you say anything bad about Uncharted 4? To me, that looks like a totally different character now. You know, it's like they up-res his face. Like I was talking to the director of Just Cause 3. It's like new voice actor for Rico in Just Cause 3. It seems like a totally different vibe they're going for with him. You know, like he definitely seems much more down to earth and just kind of having this like crazy Latin, like handsome flair. Like he definitely seems kind of more like a roguish, like guerrilla type soldier guy. And to me, that I get kind of taken aback, but at the same time, it's Just Cause. I'm like, whatever, I don't care. You know, it's not like I'm really like vested in the story.
Yeah, I don't think the developers are even invested in the story in that game.
So, you know, I think like when you finally get to that battle, when like Londi and you know I don't remember the main character Shenmue. Like when you finally get to that fight, if it's like super HD and like his face looks totally different and like they recast,
but his face does look totally different. It doesn't even look like him.
It looks a little bit different, but it looks more like. It looks more like the old games than Uncharted 4. You know, than like clearly like the visual upgrade. It doesn't look realistic. He looks like a video game character.
Here's what I would say about Ryu and the footage that they showed of Shenmue 3. If you put him in another game and they're like, who is that? I would never guess that's who it was supposed to be.
Interesting. Okay.
Other than like the Band-Aid, which he's saying now he's going to remove or something like that. I don't know.
I just think if you make it look like it could potentially be on the Dreamcast or maybe you know whatever console we would have gotten from Sega if that hadn't been their last system. Then you can slide Shenmue 3 on your shelf right next to 1 and 2, and it's a complete package, as opposed to being like Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2, and then, whoa, this weird, game that they made. But look at like
Final Fantasy 7. I mean, it's not going to look like the original Final Fantasy 7.
But it's not taking away from 7. We still got 7. When you line all the games up, they still have this natural graphical progression. You know, you can kind of follow the evolution of the series. And so I think, like, for them, you know, it's they really want it to be that final chapter. And I think, well, like, take Return of the Jedi. Like, it'd be weird if Return of the Jedi had come out in 1993 as opposed to 1983, and you have all this like beginning of CG effects and all this weird stuff. And it's
honestly, I don't know. I think the effects they did in the Star Wars movies looks better than a lot of CG that comes out today.
That's a whole different conversation.
I mean, I'll be completely honest.
It's just the distance. You know, like I think he really wants to make it feel like Shenmue, and I think part of that is just
then they showed
the way those games looked.
The one shot where it's like going from like rock to rock across the creek, like. That just reminds me of like all the goofy stuff that was in the Shenmue games, and like to even show that in like the debut trailer, it just makes me really nervous, man.
Maybe that's it, you know. But it's like, who are we to say that to that guy in the crowd? He's like crying. Yeah. Maybe the skipping across the rocks was his favorite moment from that video. It's weird. Like Kickstarter's a weird thing when you make these passion projects. When you make something that's like, we're going to make your dream come true. It's like, do we then feel the need because we already got paid? He's got like what? He's approaching $4 million. I know Blue Pass 3 was like $3.5 million.
But you can't make a game like Shenmue with You can't make a game like Shenmue with $40 million right now. Like you just can't.
So I wonder, like, are you making something that'll appeal to everybody? Are you going to try to bring new? Obviously you will. But is that really your intent?
The QuickTime events, like if the game is loaded with those QuickTime events, like.
But well, if it's not, won't that betray what that series was?
That's a thin line to be walking on.
I know.
Right there.
It's weird. It's weird to go back in time. It's like, but the other reason I'm okay with graphics is like. I do kind of dig that. I do kind of like, a game like Cuphead. We're like, this is like, what am I looking at right now? This is weird. It's
Cuphead looks great.
It's like a modern game, but it's really based on old animation. So I do get this retro vibe to it. And there are still, like tons of independent games we got now. They're pixelated, and they're like, I just want to make, people have been clamoring for like, Castlevania doesn't know what the hell it's doing. Konami in general doesn't know what they're doing, and people are just like, just Symphony, just that, just do it. I don't care if it looks any better or worse than that. Just that. Just give me more of these old games that I love. So. Do you break the bank and make a whole new Shenmue 3?
Honestly, I would prefer to have a game that looks like a modern game. Like, to me, it would be distracting if it looks like it just. I mean, not even just like the models, but like the animation. I mean, everything just seemed really cut rate in that trailer that they showed so far.
It charms me in a weird way, Shane. I don't know.
I hope it's just a placeholder. And then the other side of this story is that a lot of people are complaining that Sony allowed Yu Suzuki to come on stage and basically plug his Kickstarter during a press conference. Yeah. And I honestly have no problem with this whatsoever.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't know how interesting this conversation is going to be. Because I think that's like a real. I mean, getting into like Gamergate stuff. It's like being and for the record, like this guy was editor-in-chief for a long time. Like this, you made all the tough decisions, you did all the business, and I like got to make fun videos and read voiceover all day. And like now for the last year, it's actually like this week is like the 1-year anniversary of me being editor-in-chief of Game Trailers. And boy, that just blew by. Like so many things are coming up that I just never really thought of before, and I really analyzed, and I'm like really seeing a lot of stuff like behind closed doors. It's just that iffiness of you being like, well, he's on stage, but he is making this announcement, and it is kind of cool that Sony's being like, we support this, and Sony's really big on their community, and so like we realize that we imagine that the Sony audience, there's a lot of Shenmue fans out there, so this does seem relevant, but at the same time, are they plugging that? Are they saying that we do want to give you money? That kind of like that gray area.
Does it matter though? Is there even a gray area though?
It's everywhere. It's for everything.
Everything.
Everything is a gray in this industry. There's just no way to really like say like this is the right way that you should do it. That was bad specifically for this one reason. And not to mention I think if it hadn't been successful, I think if you were to say like if Shenmue 3 hadn't been at the Sony press conference, there's no way it would make anything. And it's like
I don't think that. I think it probably would have eventually hit its goal, but I don't think it would have hit it in like we were sitting here like on our live stream after the Sony press conference, and Matt is like, it's at 500,000. 5 minutes later, he'd be like, it's at 800,000. Like an hour later, he's like, it's at like 1.5 million. And if it hadn't happened on Sony's stage, that never would have taken place. And it probably would have never reached what it's at now with like 4. It probably would have got around 2 and would have petered a little bit, would have hit their goal, but then, there are other investors involved here. There's no way they're making this game for just a Kickstarter money.
Right.
It's a proof of concept, basically saying, yes, there are people out there who still care about this franchise and still want this game to be made. And in my opinion, any publisher could have stepped forward and had it on its press conference, but Sony's the one that did it. And so I think what you're seeing is a lot of people that are like, well, why was it at Sony instead of at Microsoft? Like, instead of just looking at the better good of it, which is we're going to get Shenmue 3, like whatever it took to get it there, like it's happening. And I just think people should be happy about the fact that we're all getting a game that we've all wanted. I probably would have liked to have seen it 5-8 years ago instead of now. But whatever, better late than never. As Ryan Stevens likes to say, better late than pregnant. Like I'm totally fine. Like I'm glad Sony that gave them. I mean, the money that somebody would have to spend to get on that stage for that amount of time, I mean, you're talking millions of dollars. And Sony was just like, our community wants this game. We want this game. Let's give it to them. And that's pretty much what they did.
And Sony's been doing that. They had the same vibe. They did that with Tim Schafer last year. They had Tim Schafer come out, and then they announced Grim Fandango. And so it's like they love that. They love, kind of baiting you with like, hey, Sony community, do you like this? We're going to make it happen. We're going to help. It either in publishing that or allowing that on our console or getting out here with the announcements and maybe something that I would have thought could potentially be iffy. I mean, you can kind of see it in the way Adam Boyes presented that. He was like, just heads up, we're not producing this game. This is a Kickstarter. It said Kickstarter, giant letters behind him. So he was upfront about that.
Even if they were producing it, I'd be fine with it. Like I don't understand where the issue is here. Like,
well, Rise of the Tomb Raider
it would make even more sense if they actually were the ones that were going to publish the game.
Tomb Raider was one of Xbox's biggest things. And it's just like what when they first got the Tomb Raider license, when they first got Rise exclusive to the platform, for a certain amount of time, they were like, this really makes sense for Xbox. I'm like, what? I don't think Xbox when I think of Tomb Raider doesn't make any sense.
Either, I think of PlayStation when I think of Tomb Raider because that's what I played the original Tomb Raiders on. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think of Sony when I think of Shenmue. Like again, like none of that really makes sense. It's just a matter of when somebody says like, why Sony? It's like, because they made the deal, man.
Yeah.
They realized how important that
was. Look, Sega passed on this game for forever.
Because you look at something, we just got done talking about Nintendo. You look at Nintendo with blinders on. You're like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you bring Zelda here? Like, why are you? Why is there's this disconnect between you and your fan base? And then you look at Sony, it's the exact opposite. Like Sony realized they knew. Like, I'm sure there's tons of executives at Microsoft and Sony that would not understand for a second why Shenmue 3 would be big news. Why that could potentially be one of the biggest things to come out of E3.
For sure, yeah.
But boys knows. He gets it. He knows right away.
Well, he used to work in the press, so.
Yeah, and he knows like building that stuff up, and doing it the right way. And that'll have an impact, not only obviously for the project itself and the Kickstarter, but for Sony.
The ironic thing about it too is that a couple months before E3, these rumors started swirling around that Microsoft was actually working on Shenmue 3. So much so that Phil Spencer came out and said, no, we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And here we are. Sony swoops in, is like, well, we'll do something. Like, what's going on here? And next thing we know, there it is at the press conference. So ultimately, I think everyone should just be happy. Like we're finally going to see the end of the story of this. The trilogy is going to be wrapped up. Personally, I hope it's like a modern game and it isn't just another Shenmue, because I think a lot of people will not like the game.
Right.
And I want it to be successful. I wouldn't mind seeing Shenmue 4. I want it to be a game that people are going to like.
That's my
fear. Like if it is Shenmue 2.5 or whatever, I think that's a problem.
What if Suzuki gets like so high on his throne that he like finishes 3 and he's like, okay, well the big Lon D fight, we'll save that for 4 because 4's obviously
he can't do that. He could not. That would just burn every bit of fan equity he had left.
Right. So I don't want Shenmue 5. I would just wrap it up.
Wrap up the story, but cliffhanger, whatever.
Yeah.
They could do another one if it's good enough. And if it sells well, they will do another one. You know that much, Brandon.
Yeah, for sure. Kickstarter's crazy, man. What a weird era.
It is. I love it, though. It's great, man.
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, we're getting a real Castlevania. Even though it doesn't have the name, we're getting another Castlevania when Konami couldn't bother to service its fans. So
again, I love press. I love game trailers. And when you can just like merge like all of it, like development and advertising is all happening at the same time. It's fun. It's exciting. And there's no right or wrong way to do it, as is evidenced by people freaking out. It's like, is this kosher? Is this okay?
Yep. So let's move on to the next topic. As you guys know, E3 is the 1 week where a game's fortunes can rise or they can fall. And we're going to talk about games that we feel like their E3 showing either sent them up into the stratosphere or it sent them sinking and kind of scrambling for some more hype. So we're going to start, Brandon, with... We're both going to pick 2 games.
Yeah. And
we're going to pick 2 games that we feel like their hype level or our anticipation for those games rose thanks to their presence at E3 or their showing at E3. And then once we finish this, we'll go and we'll talk about 2 games apiece that we feel like our hype levels for those games dissipated a bit due to their E3 showing. So, Brandon, what is your first game that you feel like elevated its game at E3?
Star Wars Battlefront.
Battlefront.
I'm scared about this project. Battlefront 2 is one of my favorite Star Wars games of all time. I did a Star Wars retrospective of Game Trailers, and when I was writing that, I was like, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is the best-selling Star Wars game ever?
That's hard to believe.
I don't know if they can say that now, because I don't know how much money Galaxy's made or how much money Old Republic is making right now. But like at the time, Battlefront was the best-selling. Battlefront 2 came by and beat Battlefront 1. It was just such a huge moneymaker for the for Lucas and for just promoting Star Wars in general, and then just 3 like totally fizzled, and there were all these opportunities to bring it back, and then they announce it, and it's Battlefront again. It's not Battlefront 3, and that always makes me nervous. And
what is it with this? Why are they all of a sudden like? Why
everybody's rebooting? Yeah,
it's like
Hitman's
Doom
rebooting,
is just Doom.
Need for Speed's rebooting. It's interesting. Well, I think once one person does it, I think everybody kind of looks at. It's weird that we're in the era right now of like all of these franchises like restarting, and reboot kind of has a negative taste to it, but at the same time, it's exciting to see a company.
It's just a name, though. Why? I don't understand it. Like I can't get why they're like basically calling a game the same name as a game that they already released.
So because it's EA and because we like the Battlefield's had some hiccups lately, I was like, oh, DICE is doing it. I'm like, on one hand, like I don't know if. And they're dealing with this third party, so they got to like get assets from Lucas, and like, I could see all sorts of stuff going wrong in between that, sharing and then like, so they announced it in the E3 fall, and we were like, here we go, we're gonna gameplay, it's gonna be rad, and then they get this weird like documentary thing where they're all talking about how much they love Star Wars, and it's just like there were so many reasons where I'm like, I just don't see this thing happening, and then I played it. And oh boy, so I played co-op survival mode, and I played the Hoth battle.
Yeah.
And it is, first of all, one of the best looking games at the show.
Oh, for sure.
That is just the lighting and.
I'd expect nothing less from DICE.
Yeah, and I'm a big Disney Infinity fan, and I actually haven't told any of the development staff this, but like the sound effects in the Infinity playsets are like.
Not right.
Yeah, it's like Hans Blaster's like, okay, so like Avalanche is a small team, that's why they brought in all these other developers to pull that off. But just like the engine noise, the guns, the explosions, like even sound effects I never heard of before.
And that makes
like,
a big difference.
They have like there's lots of shield technology in Battlefront, so there's like a power up you can get. You like drop a shield and everybody can duck behind it. And just being in that and hearing the laser blast like ping
going
off of that and like the
yeah.
echoing inside, like. And just the lighting, just the way the explosions look incredible. It's difficult, like I heard a lot of people that just got completely schooled in the survival mode. You're doing like a horde mode basically, where you have like all these stormtroopers coming in. And the fact that we saw a 20 on 20 gameplay demo, and they show that first at the press conference. Everybody's just like, "Oh my God, we're finally seeing it!" And they're like, "Okay, but that's probably smoke and mirrors." That was really rehearsed, and I bet it's not that crazy with all the ships and everything. And you get in there, and it's nuts. I mean, and it seems like to me that they showed a lot. That they showed 2 different modes. That was more than I was expecting. And they show that off. They tease the Jedi and they tease Luke and Vader, but we didn't actually see that in the gameplay stuff. But we've seen
but
Luke,
there will be lightsaber battles in the game, right?
There'll be
lightsaber
lightsaber
in the
characters,
trailer, but I didn't get to play that at E3. They didn't have it in the game yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they teased you. Because now you're hungry. Now you want the lightsaber battles.
Yeah.
And I get the vibe that they showed things in the first gameplay trailer when they had that gameplay reveal right after the Star Wars Celebration, and they teased little like here's a little Tatooine, here's a little and here's this like volcano planet, and so I think there's like still more that we have to see, still more modes that they have yet to announce. Clearly more heroes. We've seen Boba Fett, Luke, and Vader, and that's it.
Yeah.
So. The reason why I was so surprised by its showing is the fact that I got hands-on with more than one mode, that it looked better than I was expecting, that it sounded really great, that I had a lot of, legitimately just had a lot of fun. I was like bantering with the guys that I was playing with.
Yeah.
And it seems like they have so much more to show, and they've, it's coming out right before episode 7, so like they can't buck that. They can't just show up in October and be like, enjoy episode 7, we'll see you in 2016. Like that's not happening.
It's coming, yeah.
So there's just so many signs for it just being more on track than I thought it would be. And I think, it's maybe unfair that it's up because I had so many reservations going into it.
Yeah.
But it's always nice, checking out a project you're really excited for, but kind of nervous about at E3, and then it just rings, all the bells go off. It's great.
That game for me, I almost added that to my 2 down, believe it or not. I'm a big Star Wars fan just like you. Not as big as you or Matt. You guys actually trump me in knowledge of Star Wars, which is rare.
We'll try later. We'll see. We'll arm wrestle.
I want to see a Star Wars off between you two guys. That would be something worth
I don't know. He doesn't have a camera on him, but he's got a badass shirt. It's the Emperor's background behind his throne room. It has an Emperor penguin.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It's excellent.
Yeah. So look, I love Star Wars. I grew up with it. Original trilogy. I'm an apologist for the second trio of movies.
Right.
Like I can still watch them and enjoy them. Like
I can sit on both fence.
I am a dyed-in-the-wool Star Wars fan, and so I was maybe that's what it is. I was really excited about this game going in, and then once I played it at E3, I was disappointed in it because I'm also a big shooter player. Yeah. And I've played a lot of shooters, and I don't just play them like until I finish the campaign and throw them away. Like then I play the multiplayer for months after that. It's kind of like the game that I pick up when I have 30 minutes to play while I'm waiting for my wife to get ready to go to dinner or whatever. Like shooters are just kind of a part of like my everyday life. And in all honesty, as somebody who plays a lot of shooters, I felt like the gameplay was pretty shallow. Like just the way the aiming works, and like I don't see serious first-person shooter fans really liking this game. Like, I'm sure they'll play it, and maybe they're smart in doing it this way because Star Wars is sort of a casual franchise, and maybe they want people who aren't just first-person shooter fans to get into it, enjoy it, and play it. I understand why they did it that way, but just from my perspective, what I enjoy about first-person shooters and how I play first-person shooters, I felt like it was a little bit shallow, the game.
I think, to draw a comparison to something that I think has a really strong multiplayer offering right now is Black Ops 3. And I played that before at an event where they announced that, and then I played it again at the show. and that's like so focused on movement. You know, they really want to make it accessible. Like you vault over stuff really easy. You can slide, you can wall run and aim in any direction while you're doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really, like you said, like that minute to minute. That was our argument with Far Cry 4 and Wolfenstein last year for Shooter of the Year, because I acquiesced that Wolfenstein in general had better shooting. You know, but to me it was like the world of Far Cry and how all that stuff came together that edged it out for me.
Yeah.
And I think in something like Destiny and something like Call of Duty, the actual shooting is better. You know, it's just there's more you can do. The weapons are more interesting. But when you think of like being on Hoth and the possibility of like, you know, getting like a power-up rocket launcher and then having some guy in a TIE fighter be like, I'm going to what? And then you get blown up. Like, what happened? It's like, that was a guy on the ground that took you out, that just got some, you know, magic shot, you know? And I think it's like the scale and the world of those battles, not to mention, obviously, the nostalgia. And one of the things that kind of like bummed people out initially when they first saw, and you mentioned this before the show, not to like steal something you were going to bring up, but the fact that you can't control AT-ATs. Yeah. I've officially learned it's AT-ATs now, but I'm still calling them AT-ATs.
I don't care, man. They've always been called AT-ATs.
The fact you can't, that in the mode they showed at Endor, even though they did show that you can kind of control them in the Hoth battle, they're like, oh, it's a specific mode, but I kind of dig that because I think that's really smart if you're going to have a licensed product. Have modes where I get right to the good stuff, where it really kind of sets up these fun cinematic moments where you know they haven't really talked a lot about how does Vader come in, who's controlling him, does he come in once during match, you know, and setting those conditions where it'd be fun to have a multiplayer mode that was just heroes, you know, and so I'm looking forward to that stuff. I'm looking for them to do things that maybe Call of Duty doesn't do, where they kind of shoehorn you into a specific mode. They really want to have it be diverse. But I think Battlefront is a smart game to do that because you want to recreate these specific moments, these memories.
And don't get me wrong, I'm still very excited for the game. But I could see myself playing it for like a month and kind of getting my Star Wars nostalgia kick and then maybe moving on to something else.
Sure.
And I also kind of wonder if it didn't have the Star Wars skin, if it would have as much hype as it does now.
No, it would not.
Yeah.
But I have a group of friends of mine that huge Star Wars fans. These are the guys that did Star Wars the Musical when I was in high school. And so
look that up on YouTube.
Yeah, Star Wars Musical on Vimeo. Look it up. And like once, like 2 or 3 times a year, you know, we all have like an email chain where we're all talking to each other. We've known these guys for like 15, 20 years. And games will pop up. Destiny was one of them. You know, where like they were just kind of murmuring. They'd be like, "Should I get this? What console are we getting it on?" And like, there's always that attempt to like rekindle that high school magic of us all playing the same game at the same time. And right after that, you know, gameplay hit, you know, we all just immediately...
Everyone buy a PS4.
Yep, they were like, okay, PS4. And some guys were like, oh, next Xbox One. It's like, tough, you're getting a PS4.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about games in general, how it can bring people together.
And I think that just because we're such huge Star Wars fans, it's like, finally, it's interesting to see that, like, click. There's no question that we're all going to be playing that game. But who knows? I think the big thing with Battlefront now is how much are we getting? How many heroes? How many modes? How many planets? How many
they have to leave something for the rest of the year to promote.
How do I customize my soldier? You know, all those specific answers, I think, will be... that'll determine really how, you know.
Well, they said you won't be able to color Darth Vader. They said there'll be no green Darth Vaders running around. Darth Vader.
Yeah. I can't, pink lightsaber, shucks.
All right, so it's time for me to move on to one of my picks. This might be a little controversial, maybe not, but one of the games that I feel like after seeing it at this year's E3, I am less excited for is No Man's Sky.
Are we doing up or down?
Oh, I'm sorry, up. I made a mistake there. So
that was a tease. That was a trailer for a later segment on GameFace.
Right. So one of the games that my hype level was really low for, but now I'm really excited for, is Kingdom Hearts 3. And look, I've never been a Kingdom Hearts fan. And not because I don't like the properties. I love Square and I love Disney. But what I found is when I go to actually play the games, like they were so simple that it just seemed like the gameplay was actually like a means to an end. And this footage that they've shown at E3... the gameplay and the combat looks like it has been completely redone, reworked. It's like 500 times deeper than it was before. And so all of a sudden, a game that I really wanted to like all this time but never really did is a game that it looks like I might actually be able to enjoy.
Here's the shot. Here's the shot coming up. It's when he jumps. When he jumps off the cliff, that's the shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, you boom, right there.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, I dabbled in Kingdom Hearts 1. I reviewed Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah. So I played that whole game, and everything, it just felt like corridors and stuff like that. I don't want to get into a Kingdom Hearts argument. Like, like a lot of people in our community are incensed with me because like I am a massive Disney fan.
Yeah,
huge.
No, I know that for a fact. Yeah,
huge.
You're one of the biggest Disney fans I know.
I grew up in SoCal. I went to Disneyland when I was 2, and Disneyland's just my favorite thing in the world. I love video games, but Disneyland just destroys it. But at the same time, I love Square. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, so you'd think putting these two things together, but it just like kind of goes off on its own tangent so much that like I just
Well,
I
it's also
really
very
got into it.
random.
Yeah, and working with someone like Mike Damiani for so many years, you think it would just like rub off on
Who
me.
loved Kingdom Hearts.
But yeah, I think we saw more of this game at the show than I think than I was expecting.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought we
way
would get
more.
We're
We're sitting there watching the Square press conference, and it's so funny. There was some like huge fans at the press conference, and the first time they mentioned Kingdom Hearts, they're like, "And we're gonna go to it now," and like you hear the fans go, "Yeah!" And then they show a mobile game, and then they like sit down. And Matt and I were sitting here like all those poor people, and we're like, poor us. Like, are they going to show Kingdom? And then they did show Kingdom Hearts 3, and I thought it would just be some crappy CG trailer. Not crappy, but I want to see the game being played.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was going to be another CG trailer where they're like, please remain excited while we work on this game. And sure enough, they show off like a ton of gameplay from the game, and I was pleasantly surprised by what they showed finally from this game.
Looks awesome. Like, definitely picking things from the Disneyland. The Disneyland vault that are very bright and shiny. You know, there's like the cups spinning around and fireworks and like the big ship that's all lit up. Lots of light bulbs in the Kingdom Hearts gameplay. But I think you touched on it, Shane. It just looks, boy, does that look fun. Boy, does that game just look really great. You know, and it looks like a fun world to run around. And the Kingdom Hearts is all about those worlds, and clearly I'm guessing this is like the Tangled map that we're seeing, you know, because they had the director coming out from Tangled, which is also an interesting announcement. I want to touch on that a little bit, but it's really smart to focus on just one of those things and kind of show how big it could be, because then the mind wanders like, wow, if that's just one of those worlds,
right.
And if we're going back to worlds that we've been to in other Kingdom Hearts games, are they going to be different, bigger,
right.
You know, have more stuff in them,
play better?
But, you know, just kind of, talking about when we were getting back to a topic before, we were talking about like Need for Speed's rebooted, Hitman's rebooted, like all these things are kind of like going back to the drawing board. It seems like Disney's doing that, certainly with Star Wars, where they like kind of like erased the expanded universe,
right.
And they're like restarting a lot of their own stories with their own shows and comics and stuff. It was interesting for Disney to kind of step out and talk about, for them to be like, hi, we're here at Disney, and Disney's going to talk about
that was a big
Kingdom
deal,
Hearts. Because it usually really comes from like the Square camp.
It does,
you know, when they release media, and then having the guy from Tangled come out and be like, we're really excited about, you know.
There's even like the Disney copyright on the trailer when it starts. Yeah. Like, it doesn't have like a bunch of Square branding. It's like got the little Disney watermark down in the bottom right.
So, you know, talking as much as I have with John Vignacchi, who's, you know, leading Infinity, and how difficult it is, how like there's no win-win across the board. Every single time they work with a property, they're starting way back at square one to really help explain to them, like, okay, I know you don't play video games, but this is what we're doing, you know. And like, and I know you don't know Final Fantasy, you know, from a hole in the ground, but you know,
trust me,
trying to like
huge.
set this up. And you get the vibe from that Tangled guy that he's like, this is fun, I'm excited about this.
Yeah,
you know? And so it's like, whoa, like maybe they're going to get crazy access that they haven't had before, or maybe they're really going to dig deep and get some crazy properties out of Disney that have never been in Kingdom Hearts before. So while on one hand, you know, you're watching two guys sit in a chair, and it's like, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
I think there's
value in that for sure.
I think that was interesting and possibly foretelling of how big this game could get, which means you're going to get it even later than you were expecting.
Yeah, probably right. Yeah. So Brandon, what's the second game for you that really showed well at E3 and has raised your hype level for it?
The Last Guardian.
Yeah.
Because it's happening. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
I really get burnt on stuff like this.
How many meetings did we sit in at GT before a show started? And we're like, okay, we're doing our most anticipated of whatever game show it was.
Right.
How many times did we sit there and go, are we going to do it again?
It wasn't on our list.
Are we going to get burned again?
It wasn't on our list. Star Fox got bumped. Star Fox was at number 10. And then, like, literally, like, a couple days before I was going to cut the video, we were like, oh, man. You know, and, like, we were just talking to some other people. I could say it now, but, like, I bumped into some people, like, in leading up to E3 that were like, it's going to be there.
Yeah. Well, The Guardian broke the story.
Yeah. They were like, Guardian of all places.
Yeah. How ironic.
But, I mean, they broke a story, but you don't know. You know, it's like...
Because there were people who'd reported before that it was going to show up.
Somebody mentioned that Guillermo del Toro is going to be making a Fallout trailer or something. It was Fallout, right?
Yeah.
And, like, we haven't seen that yet. You know, so it's like you can still hear about something, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is happening or necessarily at E3 that it's happening. So obviously that demo was really great that we saw a little bit more of it behind closed doors.
The extra footage, there wasn't much really.
And it's
just a little bit.
You basically get an introduction to the character, to Trico. And it's funny because I talked to some people that were down on it, and they're like, I don't know, man, I just see the most frustrating escort quest ever for a whole game. But there's something...
Well, that's what Eco was.
Yeah, and which is why Shadow of the Colossus is definitely like more my cup of tea out of the projects that we've gotten from him. But at the same time, there is something really exciting about now that visuals are obviously great in this gen, but developers are looking to maybe do some more things with like interactivity between consoles or online options or different modes that people hadn't anticipated before. And AI is obviously something that there's leaps and bounds that we still need to make to really creating like believable environments and believable interactions between characters. And it's fascinating to me, like, to be in this world, and something I didn't really think about with Last Guardian, because I thought it'd be really canned what he did. It's just kind of like, he's just kind of a moving platform. You're just kind of like following him. He's kind of like that thing in Gears where they're all like battling on it.
Right.
It's just like, you're just going to kind of hang out with him, and then he's going to guide you through the world. And seeing the demo and seeing that, like, he's kind of a loose cannon. You don't really know what this thing's going to do. And when you see him at a distance, he's just this adorable, little like, bird dog, and you fall in love with this guy. But when he gets really close and like one of his talents
scary,
boom, like lands right next to you, you realize like, well, he's a feral beast.
Oh,
like,
he can kill you, easily.
And so, it is kind of this, as Mike Huber likes to say, an uneasy alliance. Between these two characters, and just the fact that that they could, and also some people got shot down a little bit because they're like, oh, we saw this. This was the
it was kind of weird. They waited all this time to show the game, and we get to see the same exact stuff that they had shown before.
But at the same time, like, wouldn't that be the ultimate proof of concept? That like, wouldn't people be a little nervous if we finally see Last Guardian, and then they throw this like other weird level at us, and we're like, oh, okay, this part's cool, but what about I would have loved to see that bit before where the platforms were crumbling and he was running, and like, so I think it was just kind of like a one-to-one, comparison between like what you thought it was going to be, and then now we're going to prove it, and we're actually going to show you this section of the game. The only thing I can think negatively about it is it's not the most gorgeous game I've seen that's available on PlayStation 4.
You can only expect so much from a game that was in development for a really long time for an old platform, and they're trying to revive the game.
Right.
It's like, I think it still looks good.
Yeah,
it's not an ugly game.
But I mean, you look at something like Shadow of the Colossus, and like that is a beautiful game in many ways, but not necessarily like
technically.
Yeah, like there's no one in the world. You're just running through giant open wastelands of rock
because they had to
dirt.
spend all the polygons on the giant creatures.
But at the same time, the draw distance is just nuts in Shadow. And the way things move and animate, and so again, it seems like the same kind of thing. You have the scale of this creature and the way he animates, and
do you think part of it is that people just didn't realize what kind of game this is? I think a lot of people looked at it and, like, a lot of the footage that came out first, there was action in it. Like, he was always running and, like, trying to get away from something. But here we see what the game really is, which is it's really a puzzle game.
Yeah.
With a little bit of light stealth in it, where you just basically need to use the abilities of these two characters to navigate through the environments. I mean, that's really what the game is. And that way, it's really a lot more like Eco than Shadow of the Colossus.
Right. Well, I think it's actually an interesting melding of both. I think, and that's why I did kind of get what game this was. It just, like, all the little elements that I hadn't considered kind of were sprinkled on during E3, and that's why it was one of my favorites. But you have Eco, so you have this, like, really mysterious world, like you say, an escort quest, where you're, like, trying to get through, solve these environmental puzzles, and bring this character along with you. It's not necessarily open world. It is a linear experience where you're, like, constantly discovering these new areas. Then you have Shadow, where you're dealing with these massive structures. So, like, scale was a huge deal. Even on PS2, it's like, I can't believe they're pulling this stuff off. And so it's like, how do I manage, in a platforming action-adventure sense, working around these giant things and how they move through the environment? And so it's just like, you put those two concepts together in the same game, and you get Last Guardian, where you got the puzzles, you have, like, the scale of seeing the size of this guy move around the environment.
Well, there's also, I mean, we're showing it right now, you have to actually scale Franco.
Yeah. and that's another thing that, like, when you're on him and he jumps, it's like, that's, again, just reminds you of, like, his size and what he's capable of doing.
That was one of the things that actually put me off a little bit on this demo, is that there's some, like, inconsistencies in the demo. It's like, and look, it's good to what you were saying earlier about how the animal's kind of a loose cannon and you don't know what to expect. When you're playing with, like, a game, though, like, I don't know if I'd want a game where I don't know what this tool that I need to use to progress, if I don't know what it's going to do, that could be very frustrating. Like, it even showed, like, even in this very little demo, there's, like, one scene where the animal is basically trying to make you jump this gap, but then in another scene, he's like, you get on his back and he jumps a gap even farther than that. It's like,
one thing that they point out in the demo is that you can do that. The way they set up the demo when they played it is he jumped across and then you jump and he catches you in his beak. But they said when he made that jump over, if you see him getting ready to pounce, you could
you could have
climb
gone
up
on
and
it.
grab him.
Oh,
and
okay, good.
And then you wouldn't have to do that whole sequence.
Good. I did not see that little.
So
tidbit,
and that's kind of fun, like having having a physicality to puzzle solving. That Portal had a little bit of that, where like because you could propel yourself in so many different directions, there were some you could cheat kind of, and there were some things, and the developers said that like when they had people like work their way around in a creative way, they're like, we didn't fix the game, we just clapped and said good job, and if you could figure that out, go for it. Selling the two up as games that we were pessimistic about going into it. If I was to get my hands on this game, I'd be really excited. It wasn't necessarily the game I was really pessimistic about. I was just so burnt. I mean, you mentioned with how many years were we as journalists like, should we try to create some buzz around this and get people talking about it, and then just be have our hearts crushed,
or we end up looking like fools.
Right.
Because there were actually a couple times where I would get tips from people from Sony or whatever, and I'd be like, hey, you think we should include this on our list? And look, they have a hidden agenda. They want all their games to be included in every list.
Right.
But I would take that with a grain of salt. And like, there were people that I trusted that were like, yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. And I remember I went into a meeting one time and I'm like, it's going on. I'm like, I just got the word. And then it didn't show up.
Right.
And then, I emailed them. They're like, oh, it was last minute cut. Sorry. And it's like, it was a lot of years of frustration finally culminating in the game being debuted finally. And hopefully it's really coming this time.
And I think one of the things that I'm hoping that could possibly counteract just the whole dragging him along, the whole escort quest mentality is just looking at him. Just really seeing this honest interaction, seeing him like realize things, like seeing him discover things in the environment. Like you had the little food barrels that you throw to him, and like when they did the demo, he chucked one and like missed by a mile.
Right.
And the Trico like,
yeah, what are you doing?
Kind of like looked at the character, just like, try again.
There's so much personality in that monster, man. We all know what's going to happen in this game. Right. It's like, it's going to die. Like,
now we can
preparing myself emotionally for that now.
Now we can move past the story because he is the last guardian. So maybe this is a thing that's like passed on through time, where like he was a little tiny thing when it first started out. So maybe at the end you get to the place where like he dies and then he becomes reborn. So in the end, and rebirth is actually like a big deal in his stories.
Yeah.
Like you kind of get that at the end of the Shadow of the Colossus has that story where it's kind of like the world is reborn again. So maybe like the credits. Spoiler alert: the credits, the last guardian will be you with a little guardian with little horns,
little puppy,
like taking him into a new world.
Yeah. So my last up pick for this segment is Super Mario Maker. And it's a game that like I thought, oh, that's a really cool idea, and I'll probably like it when it comes out, but I don't really care about it now. And this is to the point we were talking about earlier where I said Nintendo needs to have live press conferences, because what sold me on this game was the Nintendo World Championship. Watching this game on there sold me on it, because the levels that the Treehouse had created, like, holy crap, man. Like, they had kind of shown, like, really simple tools before that and, like, not really shown off what it could really do. But at that event, like, that's where you really saw the flexibility of this tool. And this is where you really saw the capabilities of what you can do with it. And when you start thinking about the fact that people can build levels and share them, the game starts to sound really, really freaking awesome to me. And then I went to Nintendo's booth, and it had taken over the whole booth, and they had like a big demo where they were showing how easy it was to put things together and snap the stuff together and still make things that were compelling. And they had a guy there talking about when he built his level for the Nintendo World Championships, and how, there's this whole like psychology behind it. Like, how mean do you want to be to other people? And it's not going to be Game of the Year. And it won't be my...
It's not going to be Game of the Show.
It's not going to be Game of the Show. It won't even be my personal Game of the Year. But for something that I was like, yeah, I'll probably play it, to now like, oh, I'm definitely going to play it, and I can't wait to download levels. To me, it had a huge jump from where I was with the game before the show to where I am now that I've come out of E3.
And we always had it. It was always tricky. It still is, like explaining to our audience at Game Trailers whenever we do something for disappointing, whether it's like disappointing of the year, disappointing of the show.
You have to like
E3,
explain your psychology, and that's
like,
always messy.
We're not saying this is bad. Like, we can still be disappointed in a game that we're definitely going to play.
Yeah.
It's a comparison between where we were at here at this point and where we're at now. And so, it's like Super Mario Maker is not going to be like the game, that you're freaking out about, when it comes out. But
it's not going to sell a ton of consoles either.
But it surprised you, and It's interesting because it's something we don't see a lot at E3 is competition of new games.
Yeah.
So it's rare that like when Killer Instinct was debuted on the Xbox stage, that was such a buzzkill.
Yeah,
it was just like they just threw a logo and then they had this guy come out that just like beat the crap out of some poor lady who like wasn't good at Killer Instinct. Versus get a couple pro guys out there. You like really see a match that like the whole crowd can get into.
Yeah.
And I guess like what if it breaks, or like what if these like pro gamers are doing things they shouldn't do with the game, or worst case scenario, don't like it. Like they get to check it out for the first time and then like, I don't actually like that.
That would be disaster.
So that was really cool for Nintendo. To have these people
I also think
it
lends credence to the fact that if they're going to unveil NX at next year's E3, they need to do a live event, because live events just have more impact, man. There's just something about knowing something is happening at the moment you're watching. I mean, it goes to why people watch Twitch and live streams, why people are watching us right now. It's because the immediacy of it does something psychologically that makes you...
I don't.
Because you're on edge, because if something bad happens, you're going to see it. And they can't cut away in time. Like, it's going to be there, and it's going to be there for all to see. There's that nervousness of watching anything live that builds into anticipation and tension, and you just can't get that when you're watching something that's already been predetermined and pre-produced.
I don't rewatch that, Twilight Princess reveal at E3 because I like the pose Miyamoto does with the sword. I like the guy in the way back of the theater, like, oh my god,
even the whole theater.
You can hear the crowd, and you hear those moments. It's always fun. And they actually try to cut that out at a lot of press events. Where they'll kill the sound, and then okay, we'll go back to the mic. It's just the guy's mic on stage is picking up all of that craziness happening in the crowd.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's it's addictive, and it's you definitely absorb that excitement, especially because the vast majority of the people that are talking about E3 and experiencing E3 aren't at E3. They're experiencing it online, and so any way you can bring people in. Just like Sony had the theaters, around, and that was an interesting. That was an interesting.
That's the second year actually that they've done that. They did it last year too.
So you think about FF7, when that bomb dropped
in a theater in Omaha, Nebraska, or whatever.
Everybody's freaking hugging each other, people they never met in their life.
It's great.
Wet sloppy kisses.
Again, it's live though. That's that feeling. You can't get that watching something pre-recorded. So I hope that they'll switch gears for next year and come back and do E3 right. And now it's time for us to switch gears and start talking about games that did not improve in hype.
You go first. You spoiled one.
Well, I already spoiled one. So I guess I'll go first. My first pick was No Man's Sky. I just can't watch another demo of this game that's it's so vast, but there's nothing to do. It's sure, there's a billion. You can randomly generate as many planets as you want to. It's okay, here's the tools. Here's all the elements that we have. Let's throw them into an algorithm and we'll spit out these planets. And then we'll just keep spitting them out. That doesn't impress me. Right. You can do that very easily. What would impress me is if you got to each one of those planets and there was something actually worthwhile to do. And Matt, before the show, he said something very prophetic. He was like, you said, this planet could be boring. In the demo, he's like, this planet could be boring. It's why would you have even the chance of a planet being boring in there? And you're telling me that I'm picking from thousands of planets and some of them could be boring?
Well, it's the uncertainty. If you find a cave in Minecraft, it could be a boring cave, but you don't know. You literally knock that wall down and you see just pitch blackness in there. It's this could literally be 5 blocks deep or it could be a million, and it's just that wonder. And I think that's the main thing. But that's...
And look, again, I want to go back to what you were saying before. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm not excited about this game, or I don't want to play it.
Or curious.
I am excited about it.
Or if somebody was
I do want to play it. I'm just
taunting
saying...
the USB stick in front of you, wouldn't just snatch it out of their hands and install it right away.
I'm just saying my hype level was at 10, and now it's teetering around a 6.5 or a 7.
Right. I think the big thing for me is if you're again, I always bring it back to game trailers and advertising, but if you have a show or you have a game and you're announcing it and you have a huge bullet point list of say 100 items that are potential things you could bring up about the game. It's and then obviously you want to start at the top of the list and then save the rest of it. So you okay, these 6 we're going to save that for TGS. These 10 we're going to save that for E3. This little bit, for some reason Batman Arkham Origins multiplayer that comes to mind. Where it's oh, that was cool when that was announced. Oh, we get to be Batman and Robin at the same time. That'll be fun. So just those little bits are we're going to save those. I noticed, and I'm sure you've gotten this before. When you go and you interview people, you have that PR person behind the camera that has that list and is noting when they see the conversation start steering and no, wait, don't announce that yet. And I feel like No Man's Sky has constantly been retreading the first 5 beats of that list.
Yeah.
And they really need to get into specifics. And
he tried to show, he's like, and look, here's some space combat. Pew, pew. Now let's move on. I only have 3 minutes.
But it's like every time he brings something up, I all of a sudden have like 20 questions, and just those questions never get answered. And there, a lot of people actually have been, we had an infamous No Man's Sky argument in our coverage of E3 between myself and Ben Moore. And a lot of people have sent me articles, and they're like, "Oh, here, there's this Games Radar piece, or there was this thing that popped up in this magazine where they actually list all the things that you can do." And it's like, cool, do that at the press conference. You know, like come out on stage. Fallout, for example, like they came out on stage and they brought you they basically introduced lots of different tiny bits of gameplay. So you got like little, and that's a really tricky thing to do, and Todd Howard did it expertly. We're like, watch this in the background and I'll talk you through it. You know, it's like what you're looking at now is this, what you're looking at now is this. And he really wanted to show the game off. And it's something where you really have to give me little, like an appetizer plate, where you like just give me a little sample, like mining. Show me mining. Like they were talking about trading. They're like, oh, you can trade, and there's these posts that you go and you drop your stuff off. Like, show me that.
Yeah.
Show me literally the HUD that comes up, and show me my inventory.
Yeah.
You know, like you can upgrade weapons. Like, show me what it looks like.
Yeah.
Not so that I finally have validation of why the game is exciting, but so that I can see like, okay, so that's what I'm going to do. You know, and like. They still.
I just feel like the game.
When he pulled back and showed the planets, I was like, "You're not doing this again, please." Like,
I'm okay with games that don't have a lot of purpose to them.
Yeah.
But typically, games like that last like a few hours, and that's not really what this game is. This is one of those epic games that we're supposed to be playing for months and months, and it just seems like it's another like indie wandering game that's just been extrapolated out based upon what they showed at E3 anyway. It's been extrapolated out to literally to infinity.
Right.
So again, I'm excited for it. I still want to know more.
I'm so excited.
I don't think
and
it's
part of the
coming
reason
out
why
this
I complain about it so much is because I'm so excited, because I want these details. And it's tough because you can have two different arguments about No Man's Sky. You can say the game doesn't look good, but my argument is it's just not selling itself well. It's just not. And granted, it's tricky. You know that this is a PR nightmare about like how do we show this? How do we get B-roll from this company? You know, because I imagine it's constantly changing. You know, they're constantly evolving things. It needs to. Move on to the next stage.
It doesn't seem like there's going to be any, set piece moments in this game. Like, is there any big event that happens? Like,
yeah, but then again, people would
or
argue
you
it's
just
like
wander around and just randomly explore planets. And
there are people that would trade 50 of those Call of Duty set piece moments for this one genuine thing that just happened to me that no one ever would experience,
right?
Or finding a planet, naming it, moving on, and then seeing on social media some guy was like, "Oh, I found this cool planet." And you're like, "That was mine." Like I found that. You
think that what are the chances of that happening?
Who knows? That's the game. You have no idea. We really don't know. We really don't know like how many people are going to play this, how interactive it is. It seems weird that like the universe, has it started yet? Like the game that they're in, is that the universe that we're all going to play? Like, because he said like, oh, we'll find this planet. This planet's called Planet E3. You might discover this game now. And it's like, did the game go gold? What? I don't understand.
I don't think so. No.
So how is it?
I would be more interested if it starts.
How are you
nothing.
Developing a game that exists?
Yeah.
It's.
I hope it starts at nothing. So it just starts as like this one like seed. And then from that sprouts two, and from those two sprout two, until it just turns into this massive.
But when
universe.
does that seed launch? It's weird. There's so many weird things.
It's a very unique game, for sure. So, what is your first pick for this?
The Division.
Yeah, I can see that. First of all, I would say though, it's much easier, and this is kind of sad actually for this show, is that it was much easier to pick games that dropped in hype than it was to pick games that raised in hype.
Right.
In general. Like, I literally had to choose from, 8 games that dropped in hype, and I had to choose from, 3 or 4 that had actually increased in hype from E3.
I was really excited about Division. I love open world games. I love Ubisoft open world games. I will be apologetic for things that they do, like Towers is a big deal. Everyone's like, no, Towers game. I love Towers. It's just me. It's just the way my brain is constructed. I love exploring worlds that way. I love when they mark all the fun things that you can do in a world. And I still think there's a lot of really exciting things about the Division, but kind of what we were talking about, No Man's Sky just didn't really show that well. There's so much snow that we've seen. There's so many beaten up cars and using cars for cover. And
it felt like the demo they showed was
guys.
the same one that they showed
Right.
the first time they showed
And they
the
released
game.
this gameplay trailer where they show all these cool interiors.
Yeah.
And again, this is just a video that I saw. And I'm assuming that like they announced the cleaners, which are the flamethrower guys, and they have Rikers, which are escaped prisoners.
Yep.
And so I'm betting like I bet those guys have a cool headquarters. You know, I bet they're like, you know, there's a point in the game where you can just finally just annihilate all those guys and just, you know, do away with them. And so I needed more interiors. I needed like. It was weird to me to show this PvP mode because it could have ended in many different ways, and like I think it was the time to really show like a crazy, drawn out, Uncharted-esque set piece moment from this game, so I can see like, okay, that's how nutty things are going to get in missions.
Yeah.
And it just kind of the way they sold it was just like, you're a survivor and you just run around. And
the game
if
also
there's people there, you
quite
might
obviously does not look anywhere near as good as it did
Right.
when they first showed it.
Right.
I mean, it's the next Watch Dogs basically, where they show us this gorgeous debut, and then over time the visuals just start to take step after step down.
And it's got that like Destiny RPG open world, got to shoot this guy in the face 50 times because his health meter's that big.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't really get the vibe that it feels like an organic shooter.
Right.
It's like, oh, you're level 15 and I'm 12, and that's
And
why
now I'm never gonna be able
that's
to
why I
kill
had to
you,
shoot
yeah.
this human being in the face 50 times. And there was just like there were
Yeah.
just moments where I would just like chuck a grenade, shotgun a guy, and then go like around a corner and then come back around and he'd run up and I'm like, you're still
stab you in the
alive.
face,
Like,
yeah.
oh come on, you know. So it's again talking about anticipation. This is not something where it like started low and went even lower. I really, really want this game to be good. This concept does fascinate me. I do like.
Well, it keeps getting delayed.
I do right. I do like going into an open world that's real. You know, that when they say New York, it's like God. I'm just waiting for somebody to actually make New York. You know, and like
Yeah.
every time we've gone to that city, it's either something like Prototype, where it just is really janky looking. You know, and
or
has
it's like an inspired by New York City, like with Grand Theft Auto or something like
right,
that.
or like
yeah.
the Avengers Infinity playset where they just do like half of it. You know,
Right.
and like
it has a Brooklyn Bridge and like the Empire State Building, and they're like, that's good enough.
So that's something that I'm always going to keep my ear to the ground in this gen, is that first person that's like, we're going to do this city and we're going to do it. It's not going to be
Yeah.
inspired by it. It's actually going to be that city road for road, sign for sign, block by block. And so it's I don't know. It's just
No, I'm there with you,
It looks like a
actually.
big
That was on
snowy
my list as well.
thing.
I
and it
agree
was
with you.
and it was one of those things where like I got to play it. I got to play that on Sunday. Yeah, I got to play that right before Bethesda. So it was like at a private event. I could play it as much as I want. And I got out of that, and just like everybody around me was like, "Yeah, Division, man." And I was like, "Well, but yeah, but it's got this.
got
This
hope.
part was
Yeah.
cool." And to say one good thing about it that I really like, I do like when you get into the PvP zones, you can work with people or not, and
Yeah.
it literally the only way you know a guy isn't working with you is when he shoots you in the face. And so
Right.
like I do like that. Again, uneasy alliances. I like that.
It's like that
I like that
days
tension.
type tension, yeah. Where someone can act like they're your friend and take you somewhere and just kill you and take everything you've got.
That it's got all the bad stuff that can happen with PvP in World of Warcraft by some guy just not letting you level because he's killing you over and over again. And it has the good possible aspect of something like Journey, where you have just somebody just drift along. Oh, hi, you're helping me. That's great.
Yeah.
But what was at E3 specifically was not great.
Yep.
Kind of a bummer.
And my second down game is Gears of War 4.
Gears 4. No, it's Gears of War 4, but the
Yeah.
title says Gears. Getting back to weird game titles.
Yeah. I have no idea what they were thinking when they developed this demo for E3. None. What? Gears of War game. What do you think of when you think of Gears of War? Just right off the top of your head.
Co-op. I mean, you having these people and the way that fight with you and the separation.
Co-op is the first thing you think of when you
Not
think of Gears
necessarily
of War?
co-op, but interaction with other players. I'm not going at this alone. I'm always going to have guys with me.
Okay,
And even
okay.
in Gears 3, the big thing they showed them about the helicopter and all the ends were coming out, and it was
Yeah.
like brothers till the end.
Right.
So like that me feeling like I belong with a team and I'm responsible for these guys. And just giant set piece moments.
I think of
Just
action.
huge. Yeah.
I think of action. That's the first thing I think of. And then chainsaw after that.
Right.
Action, then chainsaw. Where's the action in this trailer? This could have been any other game. And if they had slapped, I mean, even the characters don't really look like cogs. I mean,
Right.
they're skinny and they're small. If it weren't for the uniform, you could have shown this and said this was any game. And people would have been like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's that game. That's not Gears of War. But this is Gears of War, and they show like 4 minutes of just wandering around in the dark. Like, they're totally missing the point of Gears. And you want to know what else is? Footage is coming out now of the Gears remake because there's like a beta going on or something,
Yeah.
like that, and people are able to play it.
Yeah.
I watched footage of that game, and I'm like, hot damn, that game looks awesome.
It looks really good. It looks really good. They redid the cinemas. They redid the character models.
Yeah, but it looks fun.
Yeah.
This game that they're trying to call Gears of War 4 is the farthest thing away from Gears.
I think what we got was a direct a shot across the port bow of them trying to avoid people saying like, oh, more Gears. It's just like, even if they got something that was just crazy set piece, giant, like the Gears 3 thing we saw where the mouth came up and just started chomping on like the platform that they were at and moving it around. If they showed something where you're just fighting some big thing, brought Marcus back, everything that people were expecting, people would be excited, because that was the end of the show, right? That was the last thing they showed at Xbox.
It was the very last thing in the Microsoft.
That people would just be like, more Gears, and like this is
but
in a lot of ways.
Even if it were just more Gears,
said,
it's still Gears on Xbox One.
Right.
Like obviously, it's going to look a lot better.
Right.
I mean, I would have been okay with that in all honesty. Versus what we got instead, like. It just feels like it totally lost the vibe of the. And look, this is what happens when a franchise goes from its developer to a new developer.
Right.
But they brought in a couple people from Epic, like Rob Ferguson's working on a game. Like
right.
the elements are there. So why is this what we got? Like,
everything you're saying negatively could be their mission statement.
That would be a terrible mistake.
You saying like this doesn't feel like Gears. That could be what they're doing.
That would be a terrible
You could be like
mistake.
These don't remind me of COGs. They'd be like, yeah, that's what we're doing. Like I bumped into Mitch Dyer from IGN, and he was nuts about it. And he was just like, a spooky Gears, yeah, like getting back to like the scary moments that I remember from the first game. So down.
But this doesn't remind me of the first game at all. And when I watched the footage of the first game that's all trickling online now, it really didn't remind me of that first game. Like, the first game was gritty, and they got away from that over time, and it became almost more like a tongue-in-cheek type thing, and they tried to get real like emotional in the story and all that, which didn't really fit. Like, it really didn't make a whole lot of sense, because these guys are like brutal killers who don't care about it, and all of a sudden they're like crying over it. Like, I didn't think that direction was the right way to go, and I would agree with Mitch and say, yeah, I would prefer a scarier, more intense Gears, but not the way that they're doing it here. Like, turning it into a wandering, like, adventure game, like, to me, it's just a...
Not to mention the thing that popped out was like, okay, it's like a little crab thing
dog,
with like a tail.
Yeah.
All right.
It didn't seem all that intimidating. And that was
it
supposed to be
seemed like
the big moment from it's like, shoot it in the face, bro.
It seemed like your average. It seemed like your average introduction to a new enemy type in a Gears game.
That you're going to end up fighting over and over and over again throughout the game. It didn't seem like this big epic moment. They built it up to be like a truck comes flying through the bridge and and you're like, oh man, what's in that truck? Like finally, this thing's heating up a little bit. And it's like a little dog with like 50 tongues or whatever. Like, I don't know. I was really disappointed in this. I loved Gears for the first two. The third one, I started falling off a little bit. So my hype for this was pretty high. I was actually excited at first to find out there was a new studio making it, because I did feel like Epic had kind of lost its way a little bit with the series.
Like 343, they could take this and run with it. We could see a lot of fun, exciting things from Gears
but
now.
I don't feel like that's what we got with Gears 4 at all.
So. It was playable though, which is always nice at a press conference.
It's true. They did actually play the game.
It's not like the demo starts and then we're like waiting to see the guy on stage. Like they made a point like beforehand, like reach out for the controller and be like, "I'm going to do this."
Well, look, they can fake all that stuff too. But.
Oh, sure, yeah, but I mean, yeah, but we'll never know.
And the crazy thing is, it's not coming out till
Q4
of next year. So they showed it a year and a half early and actually showed us a demo. I do appreciate that, but still, I mean, again, just for where my hype was before E3 to where it is now, that was my second pick.
I got one more.
Yep. So.
Ubisoft better not be watching this video. And this is bad. And this is bad because this is something we talk about, like, disappointing. 2 down. It's like, oh, I was up here and I was down there. I was around here on Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and I'm just like, I forget, whatever. I'm done.
Yeah.
And like,
I wasn't very high on that game.
I'm so into Gothic architecture. Like the fact that it's in London, I'm like, yes. The fact that like they're really playing up your crew, because Brotherhood's my favorite Assassin's Creed game. So like, I'm like, oh, okay, let's get back into like it's not just like I'm sending these people on blind missions and I'm not seeing them anymore. They're actually in the environment with me, and like they haven't talked about this, but like hopefully I can customize them. I can pick like the color, so we're all wearing green or something. Like, wow, that looks really exciting. And Assassin's Creed has always been one of the huge things that you like whether you expect that, but like I remember when we saw boats in Assassin's Creed 3 for the first time, I was like, oh my god, they always, if it doesn't have some huge crazy tech demo, it's got some CG trailer that's just like so masterfully crafted, and just did nothing. There was no trailer that excited me. All the demos were whatever.
I've felt that way about this game since the debut.
And I'm always the one that's in the room, like in the corner that everyone's, talking shit about Assassin's Creed, and I'm like, hey, I like this
typically
franchise.
Stand up for it.
I'm still going to be, cool with it. Like, I gave Unity an 8. I thought it was great. The game didn't break on me. It broke on everybody else. I don't know what happened. I can't explain it.
That happened to me too with Assassin's Creed 3. I played through that game. I saw one glitch the whole game.
It was like Vegas. Like, I rolled sevens every time. I don't know.
And then it comes out, everyone's like, this thing's broken. And I'm like, you're crazy. They're like, watch this YouTube video. And I'm like, I guess it is broken. Yeah. Like, what the hell?
I don't know what to tell you. And so I'm always that one when everybody talk about like franchise fatigue is the classic quote that comes up with Assassins, and every time people bring that up, I'm always like, yeah, but I mean 4 was so good, and this looks really interesting. Even 3, I was like, there were moments of 3 that were really cool. I went to college in Boston. It was so fascinating walking through all those areas and seeing that. And for the first time, I'm finally like, okay, I'm
done. I'm right there with you now.
So it wasn't. I can't really point at one particular thing. It's just that. It's like Christmas, or it's like if you go to a city that you haven't been to in a long time, and you just have expectations. Where you're just like, I'm going to go to that restaurant, and I'm going to get that meal that I love. And I went to that restaurant, and it was closed. And so I went to some food truck, and it was
Do you think it's just that the whole formula is just run dry at this point?
Yeah,
but the mystique is definitely worn off of the franchise.
Oh, sure, yeah. I think it, but again, what we were talking about, not necessarily rebooting, but just kind of getting the sense that there's a new push. There's like, okay, all of this will be known as being a part of this era of this franchise. Bringing up Final Fantasy VII, there's definitely 1 through 6 and 7 through everything else. It's like that clear turning point, and they need to turn. They need to do something where it's not just a new city, it's not just a new character. I
feel like after 3, like at the ending of 3, like, so much crazy stuff happens, not even like related to like the setting of the game, but related to like the virtual reality side of it, and like
the present day Abstergo, any of that's all just whatever. It's all just kind of brushed off.
Yeah, it's all kind of irrelevant now. Like they don't really talk about it because all the revelations kind of happen at the end of 3, where you're dealing with like these otherworldly beings.
They all happened in Revelations.
Yeah, and like it just feels like there's no hook for the game anymore, other than like you're in this fairly historically accurate environment, and I will always love that about playing these games. That is one thing that will never go away.
I'm going to review it anyway. I'm going to play it at the end of the day.
The amount of care that they give to nailing the time period that it's set in, like that is always going to have a draw for me, and I'm always going to want to play their games, just if only to be able to walk through the streets of whatever town it is during whatever era it is, because there's no other way in the world to do it that realistically.
The writing is usually pretty good.
It is.
The writing in Unity was pretty great. The Marquis de Sade was a fun character to come back to and get missions from. And it just when Syndicate got announced, not to mention it was like Victory, and then it was Syndicate, and it got leaked, and then we got like this weird kind of like tech demo that didn't really look that great, and then this like trailer that I wasn't a big fan of. So I was like, okay, E3. Like E3 is going to be this big blowout, and then
I mean, I think the one they put out like a bunch of media for Syndicate at E3, and I thought the one trailer was okay. The Erica Fear, I don't know how you pronounce her name. I thought that trailer was okay.
What?
Yeah. There was one trailer that was like focused on a girl, I think.
Oh, Evie Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was okay.
Yeah, it was interesting, but again, it seems kind of smoke and mirrors. It seems like hiding around many, because they focus on her weapons, right? So it's like, here's her weapon, and so it's like gameplay that's kind of connected by these like After Effects moments where they really focus on these things, and coming right after a game that was really buggy. I don't know if you want to show gameplay that's heavily doctored, and you're really focusing on all these moments. It's like just show the game. So I'm nervous.
Yeah. Okay, so it's come to that time, Brandon.
Now I'm sad. Yeah, let's talk about good games.
Yeah. Where we get to pick our game of the show. We're both going to pick an alternate before we pick the actual winner. So, Brandon, what was your alternate pick for game of the show?
My alternate was Horizon. And
that's a great pick.
One of the things, and we were just talking about, Shenmue and Final Fantasy VII. So we have an announcement that comes out on stage that they're like, here, Final Fantasy VII, we got it, we landed it, it's coming out, it's going to be exclusive to PlayStation, it's going to be really great, we'll see you in 2020. And then we're like, Shenmue 3, here's a little bit of the gameplay, but maybe see that later.
Yeah.
And then here's this new IP I could have sworn it was going to be another Killzone. It'd be like, here's this new IP you've never heard of before. Here's this strong, confident female character. It's open world.
Yeah.
Here's this really cool, interesting, and a lead into the story. This fascinating world that like reminds me a little bit of Enslaved or like Last of Us, where like we have seen this, kind of like degradation of society, and now like the plants are taking it back. Like that's not necessarily like revolutionary. Never seen that before, but like these like.
Well, this is post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, they said that like forever, but I mean, but I've played plenty of post-apocalyptic games before, but. Just the juxtaposition of these gorgeous environments and these crazy like metal constructs, like that whole premise, like really attracted me. And then, hello, one of the most amazing gameplay demos I saw of the whole show. So it's like I'm totally expecting to get maybe like a trailer that's in game, and then that's really cool. And then you'll announce that, and then we'll be excited about this IP, and then more to come later. But like it was the whole package. Like you got
then
everything.
the demo
was,
at the show behind
kind of
closed
funny.
doors.
It was like the show.
Yeah, and then the demo they show behind closed doors actually shows a little bit more of the game, and actually the information from that is what actually got me more intrigued, because when you see that you get that information, you realize that it's actually kind of like a Monster Hunter game, but it's the Monster Hunter game for the rest of us. It's like a AAA Monster Hunter game. I mean, some people would argue Monster Hunter is AAA, but it's really not. It's a great game that is very focused, and this has a lot of the same aesthetics. There's like trapping, and there's some strategy that's involved when you're fighting these massive creatures, but there's also this open world and this story that envelops that sort of a concept, which we haven't seen before. And so, I like Monster Hunter a lot. I've burned a lot of hours playing that game. I've also burned a lot of hours playing Phantasy Star Online. I'm getting those vibes from this game with the open world thrown in, with a legitimate story that you actually care about thrown in, with some of the best looking real-time graphics I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
Look, this game was right on the fringe for me for being one of my picks.
With crazy AI.
Yeah.
It's like I saw that demo at the show. I had a couple of the people that, from our team that checked out the Horizon demo, and then I saw it finally on the last day that I was at E3. And it was a totally different fight. The way this thing moved, like the guy would be setting up a shot or something, and the guy would just tail swipe and knock him off his feet. It was just like a very unpredictable demo, and that's got to be really scary going to E3, being like, I hope I survive this demo. And the amount of detail that you saw just in this one thing, just like how many attacks that it did, all the weapons that were on it that you could take off,
the destructible armor that were
like how they were grappling thing that you could tie it to the environment, you could see it struggle and like get frustrated, and then have this gameplay trailer and show this like village like way from a distance, and you're looking at, and they show this like concept art where you see this bustling metropolis, and you're like, I bet that's incredible. Based on what you've already shown me. I thought the way you roll a game out, like the other two games that we're gonna talk about, or the couple games we're gonna talk about in this segment, we've heard of before, leading, and it was kind of like a proof of concept.
Right.
And the fact that I didn't know this game existed, and I saw, like you proving not only just from like the concept, like the music and the graphics and the combat and this world, and the team behind it, and the whole division for this new series, it's just like win-win.
That is actually why this did not make one of my first or second, is because it's Guerrilla. And because I've played a lot of their games, and they always look great and look incredible, and then when you actually play the game, the gameplay is always lacking. And it just... I've been swindled by them so many times. Like, the last Killzone, the PlayStation 4 launch game, was not a good game. It was gorgeous and beautiful, but I honestly did not want to play that game anymore after like a few hours. Like, I honestly kept playing the game solely to see the next set of environments that they had built, because the game was absolutely gorgeous. But as far as enjoying playing the game, I didn't enjoy it at all. I did enjoy the multiplayer a little more than the campaign, at least. But, I mean, I'm a little reticent to get behind this game 1,000% purely because it's Guerrilla, and they've never really proven that they can do emotional storytelling. And this game is trying to tug on the heartstrings. Like some of the stuff that I saw in the demo, like there's one part where she has to like kill a creature because the creature could make noise and like give up her position.
Right.
It's like they're trying to tug on those heartstrings. She does like the Indian thing where she's like, oh, peace be with you, type of deal. Like, it's going the right way, but man, they've burned me before, and so easily in my top 5 from E3, and it probably was really my third pick. Like, it was the one that I had the hardest time eliminating, so I'm all over this game, but that was the one element of it that's kind of holding me back a little bit.
What's your runner-up? What you got?
My runner-up is Uncharted 4. And, I mean, that game, I don't even really know if I need to explain it. I mean, if anybody watched the demo of this game at E3...
But they can't. You can't, like, no one has seen the second part of that demo.
Yeah, where it gets even better, yeah.
Even better. I mean, just...
Yeah, which is odd. Why did they choose...
Because we're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Because they want to see it. Because it creates that anticipation.
Yeah, I guess so.
A lot of people are curious about that it's like, I cannot describe to you how much that escalates. How much it's like driving to that city and knocking, like when he goes down that one street where like, so he's like, where are you going? And they like start knocking all the tables over and stuff like that. Pales in comparison to when they're on a bike going towards the camera and this giant thing is crashing and people are jumping out of the way. It was just like...
Yep. And I mean, look, what they showed off is nothing to scoff at. No. Like, holy crap. Like, the amount of interaction with the environment, like... If you really break that footage down technically, there probably is no other game that does what this game does in real time. I mean, it is amazing. The mud alone in this game, like just watching the mud as he's dragged, like watching it react to like the tires and him, and then like the mud sticks to him, and when he gets up on the vehicle and starts doing combat, the mud starts flying off of him.
Right.
Like... Hello.
Well, and just the way he animates, like specifically, there's this one sequence where like he's completely prone, he's lying on the ground in the mud being dragged, and then he gets himself, and then he like basically gets on his knees, and then gets on his feet, and then steps up, and you're controlling this character that's doing this, and he never settles into any kind of static position. You know, like there's never that one thing where it's like, okay, now he's standing. It's like he only stands for a couple seconds, and then he like eventually moves over and climbs up onto this truck, and I think it's just that variability where it's like every single thing that's happening seems totally independent from each other and completely natural.
Like there's one thing in the demo where he like shoots this bad guy and the bad guy dies, and when he falls, like he flails, but like his one arm is like propped up against the wall like perfectly. I mean, the attention to detail in this game is just off the charts. It's Uncharted, the attention to detail in this game. Like... And, you know, why it wasn't my pick for Game of the Show, though, is because it is a very controlled experience. I think they called it, like, Naughty Dog has some phrase that they're coining called wide world or something. It's not an open world game, but look, when you can control what people are seeing, that gives you an advantage over open world games. And it also, you know, in all honesty, it does kind of limit what you can do gameplay-wise, and it doesn't give you as much flexibility as a player. Game's amazing. I mean, I cannot wait to play this game. But when I was talking about Game of the Show, you have to find one of those little chinks in the armor. Even this is really cool, where he like jumps off of a platform and lands in the Jeep. Like, you don't even think about like how most games in the past, like you would have landed on the ground, and you'd have to walk up to the Jeep.
Or cinema.
And hit hit a button.
The second you leave that platform, it cuts to a cinema.
It cuts to a cinema of you landing and then getting into the Jeep. Like, the fact that all this is happening in real time is just amazing. But... You know, again, it is this very controlled experience. They kind of know what you're going to be doing at all times.
They're taking what you've done in previous Uncharted games, just making it better.
Yeah, and it looks freaking awesome. I cannot wait to play this game.
And it was the kind of thing, too, where like the second part of this demo, that behind the closed doors thing, like people would come back and literally explain beat by beat to me the entire thing.
Oh, yeah, because they're that excited about it.
And then I'd see people at the show, and they would explain the entire thing. So, like, I knew everything that was going to happen, and I still saw it, and I was still, my jaw hit the floor.
Oh, yeah. It was interesting, though. I felt like that part of the demo probably should have been the one that was shown publicly. But I always feel like this part of it's longer, so that's why they chose to show this. They needed like the right length for the. I
like the Sully intro too, because we hadn't seen him yet.
Yeah,
like everybody's kind of got the visual upgrade.
Right.
So I like that it literally starts with him like, hey, and he kind of turns around like, get a good look. Here's what I look like now. So I thought that was set up very intentionally.
Yeah, this game's gonna. I mean, if there's one game at the show, like I was talking to you about Horizon and how I'm a little nervous because of the pedigree of the developer.
Yeah.
This is one game it's the exact opposite, where it's like, I have no concerns whatsoever that this game is going to be everything that's being shown and more. And so that's why I was confident in having it as my runner-up. And now it's time for us to announce our game of the show. But the thing is...
Our unified
game of the show is... Fallout 4.
Yep.
I was hoping you'd say that with me in unison.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're the host of the show. I don't want to step on your toes. We can try it again if you want.
So we both chose Fallout 4 as our game of the show. I don't even know if we really need to explain this. If people actually...
I do. Just because I want to talk about game of the show, what that means. And our game of the show game trailers last year was Rainbow Six Siege. And a lot of people have made fun of us now because they're like, look at Rainbow Six Siege now. It's just kind of like, just a shooter or whatever. And it's like... Yeah, but we're not talking about the game on its own. We're talking about the game at E3.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's a big thing for me.
Well, you're also not predicting like what's going to be game of the year next year,
Right.
or what's going to be game of the year this year. You're saying
think
what
I think-
game
I think-
had the best showing at E3.
And I think if you really try to evaluate, like you were saying with Gorilla, like you have those fears, and those are those feelings that you have about Gorilla are like shaping your opinion of the game, not necessarily the game's presence at E3, but the game itself.
For sure.
And so we all can have super random thoughts or baggage that we bring in, or developers that we like or don't like, and based on their pedigree, we can have expectations about the game. But to me, it's really what did you do? From that Sunday to that Thursday, what happened? Why were people talking about Fallout? And they did so many different things at the show, so many different facets. They were at multiple press conferences.
This is what happens when you don't show your game like 3 years before it comes out.
Right.
You show it like 6 months before it comes out, and you have the mother load to show off, and they did.
So you have like proof of concept stuff, whereas like we see interactions like we're used to in Fallout. We see VATS gameplay. We see things like, okay, I was curious whether you were going to do that. You drop bombs on us, like you can build build like your fort and stuff like that. You answer questions that people were curious about like how does this dog work? What can I do with this dog?
Because they can. They have all that information. It's all finalized. Like at this point, they're just polishing this beast up.
And I know it's unfair to like lump it also with Fallout, but like Fallout Shelter, how genius is that? Like right before anyone has a press conference, it's like, guess what you're going to be doing during all these press conferences? Just checking out your stupid little shelter.
Yeah.
What was I doing? 5 minutes before the show started today, I was checking out my shelter.
Yeah.
And while it obviously that's not the game. This is a totally separate thing. It's free to play. I have it. It's kept Fallout in my head all week. And this game looks amazing. I mean, and I think
what really sold it for me is just the breadth of what was shown at Fallout 4. It's the most complete game at the show. They have to make no apologies for anything other than the visuals. But here's the thing: people are complaining about the visuals. As soon as they boot this game up, 45 minutes into this game, they will never think about the visuals again.
Because you're in the world.
Yeah, and once you get in there, it's going to be so engrossing and so immersive. You're not going to worry about like, oh, that texture doesn't look quite as good. Like all that stuff is just going to melt away, and you're going to be sucked into Fallout 4. And we'll see you on the other side like 2 months later.
And we were talking about Uncharted, and you were saying like it's unfair when you have when your game is supposed to like just be like, look at this now, don't look at anything else, look specifically at this. And that's when if a game's not up to snuff graphically, like that's when you can really be critical, because it's like you pointed my focus at this thing, and now that I'm looking at it, it's not that great. But like you said, like 2 hours in, this game, could look like Looney Tunes. It doesn't matter. It's like all the systems and the weapons and
they showed it all.
And the excitement
That's the thing.
about going to new areas and seeing stuff.
I almost got lost during the presentation at some points because there was so much information because they were ready to show it all. It's a complete game. I mean, you can tell it's coming out in a few months. It's not coming out 3 years from now.
And it was diversified. We talked about Uncharted, and like that was amazing, but it was still Uncharted. Like it was predictable. It's like I'm gonna put money on the fact that Nathan's gonna like be moving through the environment really fast, shooting people. There's like lots of points. We can really break that down. By its predictable segments, but it was so diverse. All of the different things that they showed, and like I said, like it was the best of both worlds. It was like an affirmation of promises that they had made, and an introduction of new elements that none of us even thought of.
Yeah,
like I don't really know. Granted, I don't have that big of a history with Fallout, which is another reason why like it's pretty impressive that this was my game of the show.
Yeah,
because like didn't play Fallout 1 or 2 at all. Play Fallout 3 for like 2 or 3 hours, and then was kind of intimidated by it. It was like saw the size of this world I was about to jump into, and was like, I don't know if I could get obsessed with this right now. Like I'll maybe play another like 8-hour game or something that I don't really have time for, and then just never got back to it. It was a complete package. It was something that they didn't go and try to sell it at one particular angle, or
at one particular press conference either.
Right.
It's like after the blowout at Bethesda's press conference, I'm like, what else do they have? And sure enough.
Yeah, leave it to was it Xbox, right?
Yeah.
Leave it to Xbox to come around and be like, we're going to show you more blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
Like that's very very Xbox. But it just, I mean, if you're not confident that game is in good hands, and that game is clearly going to
there's a pedigree. That's what I'm
legitimate
talking about.
follow-up
like,
to Fallout 3.
If you played Fallout 3, you can rest pretty assured that Fallout 4 is going to be the bee's knees. So
I don't know what they could have done.
They nailed it.
Well, nailed it. Well done.
And our game of the show for both of us from E3 2015. So Before we go on to our deep dive, where we're going to talk about some of the games from E3 that we haven't mentioned already in the show, we are going to have a trailer of the week this week. And this is another game that I almost had on my 2-up. It was right on the outside. Metal Gear Solid 5. This trailer I have a lot of love for because it has a New Order song in it, Elijah, which is one of my favorite New Order songs. But that's Kojima. He loves Joy Division and New Order, and he finally used one of their songs in a Metal Gear game. Probably one of the last trailers he'll ever make for a Metal Gear game, so I think there might be some significance in that. But anyway, this is a 5-minute trailer, but it's worth every second. This is the E3 trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
I was born in a small village.
An old cowboy went riding out one dark and windy day.
I was born in a small village. I was still a child when we were raided by soldiers. Foreign soldiers. Torn from my elders, I was made to speak their language. With each new post, my masters changed, along with the words they made me speak. With each change, I changed too. My thoughts, personality, how I saw right and wrong. Words can kill.
Time and again, the country was ruled by a foreign tongue. When he was a young boy, he lost his native language, the bedrock for any developing child. His country, his family, his face, his identity, everything was stolen from him.
Since ancient times, every civilization's ruler has had the same idea. When people unite under one will, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. And what do rulers use to bring people together? Language.
This world will become one. I have found the way. Race, tribal affiliations, national borders, even our faces will be irrelevant. The world that the boss envisioned will finally become a reality, and it will make mankind whole again.
America is a country of liberty, a meeting of immigrants. Instead of simply assimilating, its citizens live alongside others. So the Major sought a system that used information, words, to control the subconscious.
In his eyes, the greatest symbiotic parasite the world's ever known isn't microbial. It's linguistic. Words are what keeps civilization, our world, alive. Free the world. Not by taking men's lives, but by taking their tongues.
With this, I'll rid the world of infestation. Sans lingua franca, the world will be torn asunder, and then it shall be free. The chain of retaliation is what will truly bind this world together as one.
Les enfants terribles, Zero called it.
Dropping bombs.
Yeah.
That was a very Kojima move of you to play the one trailer and then a different trailer and then go back to the original trailer.
That was a mistake.
That was
I trying to
classic.
fake it out. I
That was
totally
classic
clicked the
Kojima.
wrong thing.
He unplugged the wrong controller cable and put it in the wrong port. That's what happened.
You like Castlevania?
Yeah, so we are right in smack dab in the middle of the longest episode of GameFace ever. High five for that.
That's right.
It seemed like 45 minutes to me, but it's been 2 hours.
That's E3, man.
That's what happens. That's E3, and that's what happens when two people who are really passionate about games get together.
We haven't really talked about the stuff that we like.
Yeah.
You know, like when I got this list, I was like, Super Mario Maker, huh? Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about this. It's fun. It's fun to hear about everybody's favorite thing.
So we had like a ton of games we were going to talk about at the end, but we are so far over. We're just going to talk about one more game, and then we'll take a couple questions from you guys. And the one game we're going to talk about is called For Honor. And I have to say, when I first saw the demo or trailer that they showed at the Ubisoft press conference for this game, I was like, that might be my game of the show at the end of the day, because there have been so many games that have sword combat. I mean, sword combat is just something that's always in games. And until I watched the demo for this game, I never realized how horrible it had always been. And how people had completely missed the target on sword combat in video games.
Well, I mean, you think about most action games, and it's like, how scared am I of that one guy? You know,
Yeah.
like it's really like, so it's like, you know, like you look
Unless
at
it's a boss that's presented to you.
right? But it's usually just like, I want to tear through as many of these people as I can, or if it's something like Dynasty Warriors, like I'm just gonna have a lot of fun doing it. You know,
Yeah.
like just mopping up like all this, you know, this. And granted, when you go through regular soldiers, like they are just kind of like rank and file, and you can like knock them out of the way. But just that vibe of like seeing the guy on the battlefield and realizing, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna fight, you know. And
What I like about it is the realism of sword combat in this game. It's not like you can just pick up a sword and just start swinging it like a maniac and just like a million miles an hour, just swing, 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 combo,
Right.
combo, combo. Like, you have to be very deliberate and you have to be smart with the sword combat in this game, because you make that one swipe at the wrong time, you're left vulnerable
Right.
to attack. And like most games, it's like you recover so quickly. Like this game, the sword has actual weight and consequences for its weight. Like this fight here in this hallway that they just showed right there is freaking amazing. Like, I just fell in love with this game. And another thing, too, is that I think we saw at E3 was how the passion of a presenter can sell a game.
Yeah.
This guy, that guy was freaking awesome. Like, you could just see it in his eyes that he believed with every iota of his being that this game was the shit. And on that same note, the guy from Unravel.
Yeah.
Like, that game is like a side-scrolling indie platform with kind of a gimmick.
It's cute. I played it. Judges Week is fun.
Yeah, but what it is him.
Yeah.
It's like you can just see that fire and that fervor for his game, and it's infectious, even
Right.
through a TV screen. Like,
Yeah.
you feel like what I loved about Unravel too was his hands, like it was just shaking like crazy. I'm like, this guy is gonna botch this demo so bad. He's gonna botch his presentation. He nails it.
Yeah.
Like in life, everyone gets those moments where you're so nervous and you're like, and when you nail it, it feels so good. But then sometimes in life, like you're really nervous and you don't nail it, and so. I was able to put myself in that guy's shoes, and when he came through and nailed his presentation, like I felt good for him, and it made me feel good for his game and be more open and accepting of his game as well.
It can also fall flat too, because like he comes out on stage and he's like, I'm really passionate about this. This is a project that I've, there was a very clear point in my life when I got the idea for this, and apparently I've been shopping around for like a decade. Like this is a game I really wanted to get made. It was exciting when the whole thing, wrapped up, but like at the same time I'm watching him on stage and I'm like, this smells like a CG trailer. It smells like we're going to get some proof of concept thing and then that's it, and then we're not going to hear about this game for a long time. Kind of reminded me of, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy behind infamous Second Son. When he came out on stage and was really serious at the PlayStation event, was talking about like security and like I got beat up at a riot one time. We're just like, where are you going with this? And then he just shows some like CG thing for Second Son, which turned out to be a pretty fun game. But for him to come out and introduce this thing, have that passion, and then have this amazing CG trailer that like really sets everything up, and then have this gameplay that I can't stop watching. Like, you can just loop this thing, and I could watch these little moments over and over and over again, because from what it looks like you can meet somebody on the battlefield and you could kill them right away, 5 seconds, dead. Or you guys could fight for a half an hour. And just because every single, like, you swing this way, I swing this way, I block this way. It's like everything you're doing. And not only that, but just all the other elements, this kind of like strange MOBA influence of you like controlling this like flux of all of your troops going in and trying to pick the right moment to like capitalize on that momentum, and not only that, but pick whether you want to be a samurai or whether you want to be this kind of like Arthurian knight, and like all of those different schools of sword combat coming together. And damn, does that game look good?
It does, yeah.
And that's
it looks
crazy.
Stunning.
That we're in this era of this gen now. That we're not. It's not like the PS4 and Xbox One have just come out, so we're mostly getting CG stuff or live action trailers or just like little snippets. But they can just blow a game like this out, that we've never heard of before, and has some of the best running combat animation that I've ever seen. Even something like Rise of the Tomb Raider that I'm really excited about. She's a little wobbly, she can kind of like depending on her terrain and how she's moving. And just all of the little pieces on their outfits and how they transition from like going into combat, all the sword swings and everything, and dealing with multiple targets. Like one guy takes on two guys at the same time, and like how he switches targets is really fluid.
I mean, it's funny. I mean, you look at this game, like just take a quick glance at the screen or whatever, and you're like, oh, it's another sword combat game. And like if you had told me before E3, if you showed me 5 seconds of this game, be like, this is one of the games that you're going to be most excited about when E3 is over. I'd be like, yeah, good one. But it is. I cannot wait to play more of this game. And that's what E3 also is all about, is getting us hyped to play flippin' video games. So For Honor, thumbs up for me. Thumbs up from Brandon as well. So let's see if we have any questions before we close out the show. Let's see. And I do not... Do you guys use the delay when you guys live stream? You know how you can change? Yeah,
we could.
Did you guys change it so that?
No,
we left it the same too. So it's kind of a pain, but it makes it easier to stream for.
I got to admit, I kind of like that delay. It's kind of grown on me because a lot of times I'll totally miss chat whenever something really exciting happens. So it's really fun to like just die horribly in a stream and then just like look over and be like, wait for it. And there it is. Like there's everybody like. You got wrecked.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I asked that, and now there's like 1 million of them flooding in. So, someone's saying, why didn't we mention the Xbox backwards compatibility?
That was cool.
That's a big story that we did kind of not really talk about.
That kind of cheer, you rarely hear that at an Xbox press conference.
Yeah. I also wonder how significant it is, though. And actually, this was one of the topics that I had in the show before, in the first like rev of the Big Six. It was one of the topics. It ended up getting bumped, though. Here's why I bumped it. I bumped it because there was backwards compatibility in the PlayStation 3, and I think I used it once. I used it to play Wheel of Fortune, like when like some relatives came over or something. I had like an old.
Personally, I didn't use it a lot, but I use it a lot, obviously, for game trailers, just for
for work. If you need to capture footage of older games, and so that's ultimately why we cut it from the show, because I feel like it's one of those overhyped features that sounds like it's a great thing, but once you've already had a console for a couple years and the software is really starting to flow out for that console, I feel like its functionality, it's like a function, where it just slowly
Right.
dwindles over time to where you just don't use it anymore. So
and
it's always a big story at first, but I feel like over time it becomes less of a big story.
And it's limited,
Yeah.
right? So they're going to slowly be rolling games out, which is
Yeah.
kind of the same thing the 360 had with the Xbox.
Right.
And so I think maybe a smarter play, I don't know how many of those games were approved, but like maybe announce that at the show. Like have it, like announce backwards compatibility coming to the Xbox. Yay, everybody cheers. And then it's going to be for specific titles. We're going to be rolling those out. We're going to announce later titles on, but right now, available today, right now, you can check out these games and then just do a bunch of box art or maybe do a montage of old Xbox games or 360 games to celebrate that. But it's just that fine print that I wonder, like it reminds me of when they announced backwards compatibility for the 360, that initial 360 launch event. He said, Jay Allard said on stage, he's like, and the Xbox 360 will be backwards compatible. And people were so excited, they already started clapping and cheering. Yeah. And he said for select Xbox games under the cheer.
Yeah, no,
so
I
he just
heard
kind
it.
of like slipped that fine print in there. So yeah, it's again, which is why we were talking about For Honor. There's no fine print with For Honor. It's there. You're looking at it. They explained it. We saw it. We played it. It's proof. It's done.
Yep.
And we have something like this. We're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, or for us to get into 2016 about the midway, and then they just kind of drop it, because it maybe doesn't get good reaction from fans.
Here's another question from Gordon Freemain.
Nice.
Did you like the Doom demo?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought it was just very Doom. I thought, it's a kind of game, like there's no cover system in this game. There's finesse in movement and stuff, but like that was what I wanted.
I think it's what they kind of had to do. I feel like if they had made another kind of a Doom game, people would have been really pissed off. If they had released the original game that they were making, which was more like Gears of War, that had like a cover system, and like there was parts of it where it looked like kind of like Call of Duty, people would have freaked out. And so I feel like they've stayed true to what Doom is with this game, but I would also say that I don't think it looks that good.
Yeah, it looks okay.
I think it looks like pretty disposable. Like, I don't think like after you play this game, you're going to be going to your buddies saying that's like the game of forever.
No.
It looks like it's going to be a fun diversion and probably a game you wouldn't want to play around your parents or your wife.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't feel to me that something that's like, look out, other shooters, here comes Doom.
Yeah,
it's just remember Doom. It's Doom.
Yeah,
like we're not. And
I think I'm okay with that. Well, it's like every game doesn't have to be like a 10 out of 10.
Well, you're upset with the Gears is making all these weird decisions that we don't really know where that's going thematically, and then just like everything was just like a confirmation, like Doom. Okay.
Yeah, I thought they nailed it. I just think it's Doom. Like
I like that we went to hell. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
After we saw that first demo, I was like, okay, that was it, and I like that they add a little bit more later with the tease, the BFG at the end.
Okay, we'll take one more because we are way over time. Someone says so wrong, Shane, from Mark Simpson UK. Let's see. One more question.
Bethesda also
Did you think... Okay, here's a good one. Do you think future Xbox conferences will feature more Windows 10 content? Well, first of all, I thought there would be way more Windows 10 stuff in this one. I really thought that they would talk about that. I thought they might show some comparison videos talking about, like, this is what DirectX 12 can do. This is what we did before. This is the extra juice we're going to get out of the Xbox One thanks to Windows 10. But we really got none of that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Microsoft is the kind of thing, like I'm used to Microsoft announcing some big tech initiative and then like, there it goes. We don't really hear about it. And so HoloLens, I think they'll probably play that up more because that was just a kind of demo that we got. But I think I would see it as something kind of like how you mentioned people's Twitter handles as this aside. It's just they'll mention something and they're like, oh yeah, also available on Windows 10, and then move on. Yeah. Whereas like specifically like pausing the show to talk about it, I don't see that happening next year.
Yeah, I don't know. Windows 10 is going to be a big play for them, but it comes out in like a month. Isn't that right? Doesn't Windows 10 launch real summer. Soon? Yeah. So I think by next year it'll be yesterday's news. Maybe we'll get news about like cross-buy or something like that, or a list of games that you'll be able to play cross-play, like how you can play Fable across Xbox One and PC. Yeah. I think we'll see more of that. Maybe announcements like that. But I don't think it'll be a big crux of their press conference going forward. Hopefully they just have so many games to show that they don't have time for that stuff. So, yeah. So that's it for GameFace 15, the longest episode ever by a wide margin, but it is post E3.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to talk about. I want to thank Brandon for coming by.
Thank you.
And co-hosting on the show. We will have another co-host next week as we figure out who will be the permanent co-host. Again, not sure what's up with Marcus. We'll see what happens there. But thank you for watching. As always, GameFace and E3 is up and out.